Chapter 1076. Master Zhong's mouth opened wide, as if he had not expected such a reason at all. Furthermore, one after another had died. Master Zhong and the monk looked at each other. Their hearts trembled, but they did not show it on their faces. Anyway, there were so many people. Nothing should happen. When Master Zhong thought of this, his expression changed. He said confidently, "Department Head Song, don't worry. Everything will be better after tonight. I know that all of you are the best in the industry." The old man smiled as if he believed Celestial Master Zhong's words. However, he added, "I've also heard of the people who came before me. Some of them didn't know anything and wanted to fool people. Some of them were really talented, but they still couldn't escape the next day." When the old man pointed out this, everyone basically understood that Department Head Song did not completely trust their abilities. "I survived with a gun on my shoulder. I don't believe in ghosts in this world." The old man let out a long sigh and continued, "But my granddaughter is different. I usually don't care much about her. Her parents have passed away a long time ago, and I often don't come back. I live in the army all year round. All these years, this girl has been living alone. Now that something like this has happened, I hope that everyone can really help her." This time, Master Zhong did not dare to act rashly. He only nodded obediently. The old man turned his head and said to Leah, "My granddaughter trusts Miss Leah the most. She often watches your show. She said that if we can invite you, perhaps things will turn around." "Department Head Song, you're too polite." Leah was much more unfathomable than Master Zhong. She held the crystal ball in her hand as if she could really calculate something. The old man nodded and said, "Do you have any other questions?" Master Zhong and the monk were drinking tea. Leah just sat there. She was wearing a mysterious black gauze dress and did not speak. She looked very much like a witch. There was a brief silence in the hall. The old man's gaze swept past them. Hellion Vivian saw that no one spoke, so she put down the teacup in her hand. There was a smile in her voice. "Department Head Song hasn't said yet. How is the deal? How will the commission be paid?" It was not just the others. Even the captain paused for a moment. How dare someone ask Department Head Song such a question? After all, he was from the military, so he reacted quickly. The old man reached out his hand and stopped the uniformed captain from speaking. He smiled and said, "I won't shortchange you guys. However, it depends on whether you guys are capable or not. If it's just those people on TV, I'll just ask them to leave." "Oh." "It's a good idea to distribute the commission according to ability." Hellion Weiwei crossed her slender legs and smiled. "I still have a few questions that I want to ask Department Head Song." The old man raised his hand. "Please speak." Department Head Song said that you weren't the one who wrote the registered letter. Then, weren't you the one who asked us to play in a secret room first to test our abilities? Hellion Vivian's voice was very indifferent. The old man paused for a moment. "Yes, that's my granddaughter's idea. She doesn't want to see a scammer come and never return. I also agree with her idea. At the very least, I can see everyone's courage in the courtyard house. Some nominal masters have not even started yet, but they are already so scared that they want to escape. If such people come, they will only lose their lives." Master Zhong listened at the side and lowered his head guiltily to take a sip of tea. Hellion Vivian thought to herself that Department Head Song was indeed smart. Every word he said could achieve the effect of implying something. Hellion Vivian had always been straightforward with smart people. She directly asked the second question. "Since you said that you don't believe in ghosts, shouldn't your first reaction be to find a doctor to diagnose her after such a thing happened? Is there anything wrong with her mental state? Why did you allow her to write these invitations instead?" The old man did not speak, as if he was thinking about something. Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes. "Or did something happen before that made you think that she was indeed followed by a ghost?" The old man did not expect her to ask such a question in just a few words. He looked up and suddenly smiled. "Miss, you're really not simple." At this moment, the captain whispered something in the old man's ear. The old man raised his eyebrows and looked at Hellion Vivian again. "You solved all the questions in the courtyard house?" Yes. Helene Vivian did not think that it was difficult. It was just that she needed some observation skills and imagination. She was originally from the Tang sect. If she could not even guess these things, wouldn't she have wasted her time? The old man was silent for a while before he spoke again. He said to Helene Vivian, "Before this, something did happen. Last year, Tong Tong went out with several of her classmates. One of them had an accident. At night, the tide rose. No one knew why she went to the beach at that time, but she was drowned just like that. Later, a doctor gave several students psychological counseling. I thought this matter should be over, but I didn't expect that after half a year, that is, a few days ago, Tong Tong kept saying that something seemed to be following her. Not only Tong Tong, but also the guests who came to live at that time said that they heard someone crying and saw a figure by the window. They were so scared that they took a plane the next day. I didn't tell anyone about this, but now, I can only say what I need to say. The 4 friends who were with Tong Tong that year were also here. They were worried and wanted to come and see. They all lived on the 2nd floor. I hope you can catch this ghost tonight." Helene Vivian did not speak. Master Zhong did not forget to speak. He immediately said, "We will do our best to protect Miss Song." "Very good. In the remaining time, you can discuss how to deal with tonight. I'll go up and see Tong Tong." As the old man spoke, he stood up and walked to the 2nd floor with the help of his dragon-headed cane. The captain who followed him was left behind. That person glanced at the clock hanging on the wall and said with a faint smile, "Miss Song is still very weak, so she can't come down to see you. There's still some time before dark. According to the previous arrangement, I should have taken you to see the surrounding terrain of the villa and go swimming in the swimming pool at the back. Unfortunately, it's raining today, so we can only wait until dawn tomorrow to take you to relax. The servants have prepared tea and snacks. You don't have to be polite. Just ask them to prepare whatever you want to eat. I still have to drive to the city later. I'll be back before dark. If there's anything you need, I can help you buy it." Chapter 1077. After the captain finished speaking, he turned around, extended his arm, and introduced, "There are a total of 4 rooms downstairs. The bedsheets in each room are new, and your names are pasted on the door. If you are tired from the discussion, you can go in and rest for a while. In short, it's raining outside, and there are bushes nearby, so it's inevitable that there will be danger. If you want to go out, let the accompanying soldiers follow you. I'm afraid that I'll affect your discussion here, so I'll take my leave first." With that, the captain straightened his back and gave a neat military salute. Then, he drove the military Hummer and disappeared in front of the villa. Other than the servants who stayed in the villa, there was no one else in the hall. The few of them sat in their seats. On the coffee table in front of them were beautiful fruits and desserts. A pot of delicious English black tea was still steaming when it was poured out. Because it had suddenly rained, the temperature had also dropped. Without the previous heat, it made people's arms feel a little cold. Drinking black tea was undoubtedly a good choice. It could warm one's stomach and calm one's mind. However, under such an atmosphere, no matter how wonderful the black tea was, it could not dispel the dull atmosphere in the villa in front of them. Master Zhong could not help but ask, "What do you all think?" The monk chanted Amitabha, and his eyes seemed to be in a trance. "I keep having a very uneasy feeling." As if she had really sensed something, Li Wei reached out and grabbed the clothes in front of her chest. It was still raining outside. With the sound of banging, it could be seen that the rain was heavy. It almost made people wonder if there was hail in it. Master Zhong seemed to be shocked. He suddenly looked out of the window. "Will there be anyone outside this villa? They're all soldiers standing guard. There shouldn't be anything wrong." As soon as the monk finished speaking, he realized that the soldiers who had sent them here had already returned. After all, they could not guard here 24 hours a day. Master Zhong touched his chin. "I've also heard about the incident half a year ago that the minister just mentioned. It's not that simple. Some people say that the girl who drowned in the sea was not an accident at all. However, those students were indeed frightened. At that time, everyone was very scared. If Miss Song hadn't been smart enough to call the police, they might have had a mental breakdown. I've heard of this as well. Jing Zifeng also spoke, but his tone was very indifferent, completely different from Celestial Master Zhong's. In a few words, he summarized everything. When the police arrived, they found that they were all hiding in the room, not daring to come out. That night, they played a game, and the content of the game was to temporarily pawn their souls in exchange for whatever they wanted. In the end, the night after they finished playing the game, the girl who suggested playing the game was drowned. The strange thing was that the girl said that she was drowned, but her face was completely cut open, and the jewelry on her hands was gone. If it weren't for the fact that there were only a few students around, they wouldn't have been able to determine who the dead person was. At that time, it wasn't that no one had hired a yin-yang master, but the yin-yang master who was hired didn't see anything. He only said that it was strange and couldn't find the cause or any ghosts. Later, this matter was left unsettled until it was brought up again. So there really is a ghost? Master Zhong asked nervously. Jing Zifeng glanced in his direction. He was young and handsome. Master Zhong has been killing demons and ghosts for so many years. What do you think? Me? Hee. Master Zhong realized that he was about to be exposed, so he immediately tried to smooth things over. Even if there are ghosts, it's fine. I'm just worried that you juniors will be afraid when the time comes. After all, it seems to be too fierce this time. Ghosts that die in the water usually have a lot of resentment, so some people still have to be careful. Don't be like the two yin-yang masters and not return. Hellion Vivian had heard enough of the story. She said in a very calm voice, even if you don't return, the possibility of Master Zhong staying is the highest, right? At that moment, Master Zhong felt that the girl in front of him seemed to be able to see through his disguise. He didn't like Hellion Vivian from the beginning. Now, he was very upset and didn't want to see her. He immediately stood up and said angrily, I'm going to my room to think about what to do tonight. Master Wufan, do you want to come with me? The monk seemed to have had a lot on his mind since the beginning. Now that he was called by Master Zhong, he came back to his senses. He stood up tiredly and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. I'm a little tired too. I'm going to rest first. I won't discuss with you anymore. I'll come out again when it's time for dinner. All right, then I'll go in and rest too. I don't want to be upset when I see these people who don't know the rules. Master Zhong was the first to lock the door. Next was the monk. Their rooms were next to each other, on the other side of the hall. There was a back door that led directly to the villa's courtyard. It had to be said that the layout of this villa was really good. The left and right sides were all connected. It was very suitable for living, but at the same time, it was very shady. Hellion Vivian's intuition told her that it wasn't a good thing to build a swimming pool so close to the house. After all, this wasn't a hotel, and not everyone was like His Highness, who could suppress any kind of yin energy. Seeing that Master Zhong and the monk had left, Leah returned to her room with the crystal ball in her arms. At this moment, only Jing Zifeng and Hellion Vivian were left in the living room, looking at each other. Of course, there was also His Highness, who was drinking tea with his long legs crossed. He seemed to have sensed something, and the corners of his mouth curled up. It was the unique evil of a demon. I smell the scent of crime. Hellion Vivian's hand that was sending a WeChat message paused. She moved closer to Beligaju and said in a low voice, I remember that there are many ways to sign contracts between demons and humans. That's right. Beligaju placed Hellion Vivian's hand in his palm and played with it. There was a smile in his tone. My respected master is getting smarter and smarter. Hellion Vivian was speechless. Why did he say it in such a mocking tone when it was obviously a compliment? Hellion Vivian grabbed his hand and took a bite. Her hair was still fluffy. So there really is such a thing as a soul pawn. Yes. Beligaju didn't like the presence of others when he was with Hellion Vivian. How could he put his master on his lap and hug her? The young man opposite him was a bit of an eyesore. Jing Zifeng saw Beligaju looking at him and realized that he was a little redundant. He walked into his room with a cup of black tea. Chapter 1078. Only then did Bailey Jiaoju lift Hellion Wei up in his arms. As he spoke, his lips naturally landed on her ears. However, soul pawning is not pawning one's soul to the devil, but to the Grim Reaper. We demons are different from the Grim Reaper. We have always valued loyalty and will only sign contracts with souls that we are interested in. We are not like those Grim Reapers, who like to accept boring souls and take pleasure in killing. If it's the Grim Reaper, everyone should be dead. Why is there only one death? Hellion Vivian tried to ignore the heat from His Highness's kiss. She lowered her voice. Hey, don't kiss me there all the time. Where? Belagaju's eyes were smiling. As if on purpose, he kissed her behind her ear. Here. Hellion Wei shuddered and thought to herself, forget it, if he wants to kiss, just kiss. She simply turned her head and hugged Bailey Joju's waist. She smiled brightly and said, and my forehead. Yes, my master. Belagaju lowered his eyes. His slender fingers brushed the strands of hair in front of her forehead. He kissed her gently. His eyes seemed to be able to reflect light. The smell on his body was very pleasant. It was a faint mint scent and the smell of roses. Demons had always liked red bouquets. The brighter they bloomed, the more they liked them. It was not strange that His Highness had the scent of roses. Hellion Vivian's nose twitched like a little hamster. I haven't finished asking the questions. There are still some clues to be found. The incident half a year ago is the key. As she spoke, she raised her head. Her eyes were shrewd. It seems that we need to ask the people who were present at that time. The students on the second floor. Hellion Vivian did not waste time. She immediately did what she decided. She pulled His Highness up. The two of them walked side by side to the second floor and knocked on the first door. That room was not locked. There was no one in the room. There was only a camera on the balcony. The owner of the camera was obviously not there. But where would he go on such a rainy day? Hellion Wei creased her eyebrows and immediately knocked on the second door. The corridor on the second floor of the villa was longer than that on the first floor. It was covered with a thick blanket, and there was no sound when one stepped on it. The second floor was obviously much gloomier than the first floor. Many of the rooms couldn't be illuminated from the outside, not to mention that it was raining now. Come in. After receiving permission, Hellion Vivian retracted her gaze, pushed the door open, and walked in. There were two boys and a girl sitting on the sofa in the room. The three of them opened a bottle of red wine and seemed to be discussing something bad. They thought that the person who knocked on the door was a servant, so they didn't pay much attention to it. Their expressions didn't change at all. All three of them had outstanding looks. Regardless of whether they were men or women, they all had small V-shaped faces, big eyes, and high noses. They even looked a little like Korean stars in movies. Hellion Vivian's first reaction was that these people had more or less undergone minor adjustments. It wasn't that she was conservative. She didn't think there was anything wrong with plastic surgery to make herself more beautiful. However, because she was a medical student, she was very familiar with the structure of every inch of the human body. She could tell at a glance that anyone had undergone plastic surgery. You are. The girl stood up politely. When she saw Belagaju behind Hellion Vivian, her eyes lit up. How could there be such a good-looking man? God, he was more handsome than any star she had ever seen. The girl felt that her heartbeat was a little chaotic. Her eyelashes trembled slightly as she stared at Belagaju. The other boy also stood up with a face full of surprise. Brother Bing, are you interested in becoming a member of MK Entertainment? I promise that as long as you let me package you, I will definitely make you popular. No. It was a very indifferent word. His Highness had always been so cold when facing people other than Hellion Vivian. He put one hand in the pocket of his military uniform and didn't even look at the boy. The boy still wanted to try harder. Hellion Vivian stood in front of him and smiled professionally. Sorry, he's mine. Everyone present, regardless of whether they were boys or girls, was stunned by this sentence. Hellion Vivian curled her lips and continued to strike while the iron was hot. I'm a on my OG invited by the Song family. I'm here to ask everyone something. What's the matter? The boy frowned. Hellion Vivian looked at him and said with a smile, about the drowning incident half a year ago. What's the situation? Is there anything more detailed? The more detailed, the better. After hearing Hellion Vivian's words, Everyone's face changed. Fear and paleness colored their lips. The girl said uneasily, "Why are you asking this? Didn't you say that there was a ghost?" Hellion Vivian said airily, "Only after knowing the ins and outs of the matter, can I perform a better expiation." The boy sat down, as if he was struggling internally. "That day was like a nightmare to us. We shouldn't play that game." "Soul porn?" Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. "Then let's start with the game. Who proposed to play it?" The boy lowered his eyes as if he had no strength. "Wu Dao Dao. That's why she had an accident." "This Wu Dao Dao, what does she look like?" Hellion Vivian seemed to think of something and suddenly asked. The boy didn't understand why she asked this. He first tilted his head as if he was reminiscing. Long hair, small round face, very cute. But then she had plastic surgery. The girl interrupted. The first plastic surgery was for eyes, which cost her family a lot of money. Their family's conditions were not very good. She came from a single mother. It seemed that it was not easy for her mother to support her to go to school, but she didn't seem to think so. Every time she said that she had a round face like her mother, she wanted plastic surgery. Her mother couldn't do anything about it. She could only grit her teeth and keep spending money for her. Hellion Vivian heard this and frowned. Is plastic surgery really so important? Sometimes it's very important. The girl touched the back of her head awkwardly and said cutely, "Of course, if she looks like you and your boyfriend, there's no need for plastic surgery. Especially your boyfriend, he's too handsome." Hellion Vivian chuckled. "Thank you, but that Wu Dao Dao has been plastic surgery. Can her mother afford it?" "Of course not." The girl spread her hands and said helplessly, "But what can I do? She's her mother's only daughter. There was one time when I saw her scolding her mother. She even pulled her mother's hair on the streets and said that her mother had no future at all. She was so poor all day because her mother didn't buy her the latest iPhone." Chapter 1079. When Hellion Vivian heard this, she frowned heavily. A girl who treated her mother like this, should it be said that the heavens had eyes to accept her? However, it seems that something happened to her mother later, and she received a large amount of insurance money. The girl continued, after she received the insurance money, the first thing she did was to take the money to get plastic surgery. We didn't see her for 3 months. That day, she had just come back from plastic surgery and said that she wanted to go out and play together. She arranged everything, so we just went there directly. Hellion Vivian paused for a moment. "In other words, she was the one who suggested this trip?" "Yes." The girl nodded. "We usually like to play, and it was her birthday, so we all went over. It was at the beach not far from the capital. If we drove, we could go back and forth in a day. We drove 2 cars and even brought barbecue racks. We originally planned to play there for 2 days, but we didn't expect that kind of thing to happen later." Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. "Then what did she look like? Was she very beautiful?" "I don't know." The girl nodded and said, "She just finished plastic surgery. There are some places that can't be infected, so she has to wear a mask the entire time. Only a pair of eyes can be seen. Those eyes are quite beautiful, right, Yuanwu?" The boy named Yuanwu nodded. "Yes, they're very beautiful. They look a little like Tongtong's. To be honest, I like Tongtong's eyes. Unfortunately, ever since she came back from the beach, she hasn't contacted us. Now, she says that a ghost has followed her. It's really worrying." At this point, Yuanwu hesitated for a moment and looked at Hellion Vivian. "Tongtong won't be the next one, right?" "What?" Hellion Vivian was still thinking about what the 2 girls had said, and her tone slowed down. "What next?" Yuanwu clenched his fists. Yuanwu clenched his hands. That game was very strange. It said that we could exchange our lives for anything. Wu Dao Dao was the first to sign the contract. In the end, she drowned that night. None of us knew what happened. She suddenly disappeared. In the early hours of the morning, we saw her floating on the surface of the sea with a face full of scars. The sea water hit the beach again and again. It was really terrifying. Now that I think about it, after signing the contract, Wu Dao Dao also said that something seemed to be watching her. At that time, We were so scared by her that we stopped playing after one round. Then, we started playing Truth or Dare. Later on, we probably drank too much and fell asleep while playing. When we woke up, we found that everyone was still by the sea, and Dao Dao was already dead. Are you saying that you fell asleep while playing? Hellion Vivian's eyes flashed. There were no signs at all. Yuanwu frowned and recalled. Yes, that day, it was as if we were being controlled by something. Some of our memories are blank. That game is too problematic. So, can you please save Tong Tong so that she doesn't become the next one? I'll try my best. For Hellion Vivian, the question she was most concerned about had not been answered. Wu Dao Dao had clearly been drowned. But someone had used a knife to cut her face, and her face was completely unrecognizable. Most people knew how badly a wound soaked in salt water would be damaged. A girl's face being treated like this fully proved that she was envied by the murderer. There might be many reasons for jealousy. But in the matter of disfigurement, it expressed a desire in the heart. The murderer was jealous that the victim was prettier than her. Many criminal psychology books had mentioned this before. Women were the most unfathomable. Some people would even have killing intent in their hearts because the other party was prettier than them. This killing intent only needed to be fully hatched at the right time, at the right place, and then it would completely erupt. Therefore, this line was very important. Hellion Vivian tried to ask again, have any of you seen Wu Taotao's appearance after plastic surgery? I haven't seen it, Yuan Wu said. She wore a mask all night, afraid that the sea breeze would infect her. The girl yawned. If you ask me, how can she be so delicate? She even ate roasted seafood at night. Why isn't she afraid of infection? Maybe she didn't do a good job and was afraid that we would see it. It's useless to say this now. Yuan Wu lowered his eyes. I only hope that this nightmare can end as soon as possible. The other boy also nodded in agreement. The atmosphere was a little heavy for a while. By the way, where's the person living next to you? Hellion Vivian had just finished speaking. A scream that was enough to cut through the torrential rain came from downstairs. That scream was filled with fear. Hellion Vivian's first reaction was to run downstairs. Her speed was very fast, like a gust of wind. The remaining college students were dumbfounded. But everyone wanted to know what had happened. What was that scream about? Even old Master Song was alarmed by the sound of the stairs. Hellion Vivian was the first to reach the first floor. She looked around and quickly locked her eyes on the room where which Leah lived. The door was locked from the inside. The people who followed her were still anxious. Key, go get the key. Hellion Vivian didn't even think about it. She turned her long leg and there was a bang. The door was forcefully kicked open by her. Then, they saw Leah sitting on the ground. The crystal ball she was holding was broken to the side. Her eyes were looking at the window. Her whole face was so scared that it lost all color. There's something there. Hellion Vivian looked in the direction of her trembling finger. In the pouring rain, a person was floating face down in the swimming pool in the backyard. Hellion Vivian's eyes shook and she immediately turned around. But it was too late. The guy floating in the swimming pool was obviously not breathing. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in such a position. The rain outside was very heavy, so much so that their vision was obstructed. In addition, the swimming pool was very big, and there was a distance between them. No one could see clearly who the floating person was. It wasn't until old Master Song arrived that his face darkened. He asked the soldiers standing guard in the front yard to pick up the person. Only then did people see the person's appearance clearly. Master Wufan. Leah stretched out her trembling hand and covered her mouth. How could this be? Hellion Vivian's eyes also darkened. This was too strange. After all, even if someone was going to die, this master shouldn't have become the target of the attack. Why did they want to kill him? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows and looked at Beligaju. Is this what you said just now? You smelled the scent of a crime? Chapter 1080. Beligaju curled his lips into a smile. He had never cared about the life and death of humans. However, he said, it's a very interesting game, isn't it? Hellion Vivian analyzed the other meaning in His Highness's words. I thought that the murderer wasn't a ghost, but a human. Beligaju chuckled softly and said meaningfully, "That's right. But your expression doesn't seem like it." Hellion Vivian put on a fierce expression and warned in a low voice, "Don't always crush my IQ." Beligaju liked her when he saw her like that. His smile deepened. "My master, how would I dare to crush your IQ? Hellion Vivian. Then what are you doing now? The murderer is indeed a human, but..." Beligaju lowered his head and slowly said in her ear, "There's a smell here that I don't like very much. It's just that it's covered up by the smell of humans, so I can't smell where it is. So, my master, for the sake of my nose, from now on, you're not allowed to be more than 1 meter away from me." Hellion Vivian reached out and rubbed her ears. She sighed in her heart. His Highness was simply using his beauty to trick her all the time. Ivildor, to Ivildor. Beligaju watched as she kept rubbing her ears like a little phoenix that had been stepped on. As expected, teasing his pet was the most interesting thing to him. As for the other games, he would leave them to her. After all, the principle of raising a pet was to keep her interested at all times. Hellion Vivian didn't know how His Highness thought of this. If she knew, she would definitely feel quite helpless. Who would be interested in the murderer? Except for the person in front of her. But why? Why was the monk Wu Fan the first to die? The panic in the eyes of the university students was very obvious. They seemed to have seen the scene from half a year ago. At the seaside in the middle of the night, there was only a corpse floating on the surface. "Call everyone to the hall." Old Master Song looked at this scene and ordered in a low voice, "Without my permission, no one is allowed to come close to this place. Xiao Liang, make a call and get someone who knows how to investigate to come over. Be quiet and don't let anyone else know." An adjutant holding an umbrella behind Old Master Song replied in a low voice, "Yes." The rain continued to fall, and the muffled sound of thunder rang out. The sky was about to turn dark. Other than Song Tong Tong, who was being watched by the servants, everyone from every room came to the hall. Master Zhong still didn't know what had happened. He seemed to have just woken up and was still rubbing his eyes. When he saw the corpse lying outside, his legs were so weak that he couldn't move. "Master Wufan, he. Master Zhong couldn't believe that the person who had been sitting opposite him not long ago had died just like that. Old Master Song sat in the middle of the hall, holding his dragon-headed walking stick in his hand. His voice had also become deep. "Things happened too suddenly. It seems that this place isn't safe anymore. I've gotten someone to call a car. Xiao Liang will be responsible for sending all of you back in a while. As for the 4 masters, you've also seen the situation. If you want to stay and chase after the ghost, I'll definitely reward you handsomely. If you want to leave, I'll also respect your choice." Zhong Tianxia wanted to leave, but the people sitting there didn't react at all. If he ran away just like that, how could he survive in the yin-yang world in the future? On the other hand, Leah spoke with a hint of worry. "My crystal ball is broken. I'm afraid I won't be able to help Old Master Song. I need a new crystal ball before I can do the divination." Miss Leah has also suffered a lot of shock this time. Old Master Song glanced at her and said in an emotionless tone, "Just go back with the younger generation." Master Zhong opened his mouth and was about to speak. But he was interrupted by the young man beside him. "It's not a ghost that kills people." "Not a ghost?" Master Zhong paused. He was waiting for Jing Zifeng to continue speaking. If it wasn't a ghost, what was there to be afraid of? As long as he could hold on until dawn the next day, he would receive a large amount of commission. How could he leave so easily at this time? My Shikigami didn't sense the existence of the ghost aura. Jing Zifeng's expression was very indifferent. Hellion Vivian's face revealed a playful expression. "Shikigami?" She also had one. His Highness should be considered a type of Shikigami, but he was a demon. "Shikigami?" Old Master Song frowned and looked at Jing Zifeng. The young man didn't waste time. He pulled open the backpack behind him and said, "Come out." A few small figures folded from paper jumped onto the coffee table one by one as if they were alive. "My Shikigami." Jing Zifeng's tone was the same. Hellion Vivian laughed and asked His Highness beside her, "There are such cute Shikigami." The most basic ones. Bellegaju's eyes were very indifferent. They are just pieces of paper. Are they cute? Hellion Vivian listened to His Highness's words and knew that she had to appease him at this time. They are not as cute as you. They can't grow ears. Bellegaju gave her an indifferent look. That was more like it. Hellion Vivian couldn't help but laugh in her heart. Oh my, he was even jealous of other Shikigami. Although it wasn't obvious, she still caught it. It was just because she said that the Shikigami was cute. The Shikigami could indeed understand human language, and Hellion Vivian had an aura that made people want to get close to her. Hearing her compliment them, the paper figurines lined up in a line and began to dance. Or was it Little Apple's dance? Everyone was stunned at this scene. Were their eyes playing tricks on them? Such funny Shikigami. Hellion Vivian laughed out loud. Only the young man's expression was very awkward. He pulled his Shikigami back and threatened in a cold voice, "If you go crazy again, you will go out and get wet." The paper figures immediately quieted down and stood on the table, not daring to jump again. Their little master was in the puberty period, so it was inevitable that he would be more violent. Well, they understood. Elder Song had never seen such a thing before. He had lived for so long, and he had never believed in such superstitions. However, these pieces of paper that could move without any manipulation made him look at the young man meaningfully. If it's not a ghost that kills people, then what is it? People. Jing Zifeng didn't say much. As soon as the word people came out, the muffled thunder rumbled in the sky again. Xiao Liang, who was sent out by Old Master Song, ran in from outside. He looked at Old Master Song as if he wanted to say something, but because everyone was here, it was not convenient for him to speak. Old Master Song leaned on his walking stick. Just say what you want to say. The road out of the villa is blocked by 2 broken bushes. People and cars can't go through. The rain is too heavy, and the lake nearby has been rising. The villa's communication network is also cut off because of the rain. Chapter 1081. The cell phone signal is too weak. The other party can't hear you clearly after you make the call. We can't contact the car or the rescue personnel. We can only think of a way when the rain stops. In other words, we're trapped here. The girl's face was pale as she looked at Xiao Liang with flickering eyes. Xiao Liang didn't say anything. His attitude was basically a tacit agreement. At that moment, fear swept over them. The rain didn't stop, and the sky was about to turn dark. Not only was the way out blocked, but their cell phones were also in a state where they couldn't communicate. Most importantly, there was a murderer watching them in the dark outside the villa. No one knew what his motive was, and no one knew if he would kill again. Old Master Song was someone who had experienced great things, so he sat calmly. However, such a thing couldn't be ignored. Xiao Liang, other than you, who else is in the villa? Old Master Song asked his subordinate. Xiao Liang lowered his head. Me and Adjutant Hong. Some of the rest returned to the army, and some went to the city with the captain to buy things. In other words, there were only 2 special forces soldiers left outside the villa. There weren't enough people. Old Master Song was silent for a moment before saying, "The 2 of you go to the backyard and look around. See if there's anyone suspicious." "There's no need to go." Hellion Vivian, who had been silent all this while, said with a chuckle, "Because the murderer is in this villa. He's not an outsider." Everyone looked at Hellion Vivian. "What do you mean by that?" "The possibility of someone outside committing a murder is too small." Hellion Vivian analyzed calmly. "This place isn't easy for others to find. Moreover, before we came, this place was very heavily guarded. The armed forces are all standing guard. It's raining so heavily, so it's impossible for anyone to be hiding nearby. Therefore, the murderer must be in the villa." The girl trembled when she heard this. "You're saying that he's hiding here?" "I'm saying that any one of us could be the murderer." Hellion Vivian's voice was very calm. Master Zhong shouted, "What kind of joke is this? There's nothing impossible about that." Old Master Song was the most stable one. He indirectly agreed with Hellion Vivian's deduction. All the students present, including Celestial Master Zhong, Leah, and the two servants, were scared. The murderer was among them. Then who could it be? If you don't mind, I would like to ask this friend a question. Helene Vivian walked to the side of a female university student. You weren't in your room just now. It's raining so heavily. Where did you go? The female university student didn't expect Helene Vivian to suddenly ask her. Her fingers paused for a moment before she said, I'm just taking a walk. While you were walking around, someone died. Helene Vivian said unhurriedly, what we are looking for now is an alibi. My assistant, your 3 classmates and I were all in the room, but you weren't. Immediately, after hearing this, everyone looked at the female university student, including old Master Song. The female university student bit her lip and said, I went to the attic that department head Song told us not to go up, which was Tongtong's room. I was very worried about her, but when I knocked on the door, there was no one, so I went back to my room. Did anyone see you go there? Helene Vivian continued to ask. The female university student shook her head. No, the servants weren't there at that time. I deliberately avoided the servants. I wanted to know what happened to Tong Tong. It's nothing. It's just that as soon as she came out, she said that she was afraid. When she saw people, her whole body would tremble. Department head Song sighed. Even her meals were brought up by the servants and sent in through the wooden door. This situation has been going on for more than a month. I only found out this week. The doctor said that it's a psychological barrier. It's best not to let her be agitated again. The female university student bit her lip. Is it a psychological barrier? No wonder I keep feeling that she's becoming less and less like her. Ever since she came back from the seaside, she's been a little different from before. We thought that she was the strongest one, but it turns out that she didn't get through it. Don't change the topic. Jing Zifeng's voice was very cold. You don't have enough evidence to prove that you're not a suspect. The female university student laughed. What do you mean? Are you suspecting me? Everyone here is worthy of suspicion. Helene Vivian continued the conversation. So far, you're the most suspicious, but there are 2 other people. Celestial Master Zhong, did you really fall asleep after entering the room? And Miss Leah, you should have also gone out. It was raining so heavily. What did you do outside? Leah suddenly looked up, her eyes a little fluttering. I don't understand what you're talking about. There are traces of water in your room. Helene Vivian looked at her. Her clear eyes seemed to be able to see through anything. The slippers are also wet. The bathroom is very clean, which proves that you didn't take a shower. Instead, you went out. The girl who had chatted with Helene Vivian previously exclaimed, you can even deduce this. How smart. All of them were afraid. How could they have the time and mental fortitude to pay attention to this? The beautiful girl in front of them was really too handsome. Leah saw that everyone's gazes were on her, so she immediately explained in a gentle voice, the signal in the room was too bad. I just wanted to go out and make a call. Later, I realized that it was the same outside. The conversation was intermittent, so I returned to the room. What about Celestial Master Zhong? Helene Vivian looked up. You should have been to Master Wufan's room, right? After all of you entered the room, we went up to the 2nd floor. You saw Master Wufan again, right? There were 2 cups of tea in Master Wufan's room. One of them was the cup you took from the hall. Then, he drowned. Celestial Master Zhong's face was red, and he looked very angry. You're asking us this and that. Why don't you tell us where you were when Wufan was killed? Is Celestial Master Zhong's head made of tofu? Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows and said domineeringly, didn't I just say that the few of us were chatting on the 2nd floor? If you continue like this, I can only treat you as the number 1 suspect. Celestial Master Zhong clenched his hands tightly. He was very unwilling, but he wasn't so stupid that he couldn't see the situation. He took a deep breath and said, I did go to Wufan's room. I wanted to discuss with him what to do tonight, but after a few words, he kept looking outside. In the end, he told me that he was waiting for a call and that he still had something to deal with. Chapter 1082. There's something to deal with? Helian Wei Wei repeated this sentence, Her long, shapely eyebrows creased. Master Zhong nodded. When I saw that he wasn't in the mood, I didn't say anything else. After returning to my room, I also fell asleep. Not long after I fell asleep, Adjutant Liang knocked on the door and told me to gather. Everyone seemed to have an alibi, but no one could prove whether their alibi was true or not. The female university student, Leah, Master Zhong, wait, there was one more person. She had never met the daughter of the Song family, Song Tongtong. No one could confirm for these 4 people where they were when Master Wufan died. Let me tell you my suspicions. Helian Vivian didn't hide it because what she was going to say next was mainly to tell Department Head Song. Other than these 3 people, there's also your granddaughter, Miss Song, who doesn't have an exact alibi. Department Head Song frowned. What does this have to do with Tong Tong? She hasn't been out for a long time. But no one can prove that she didn't come out during that time, right? The servants weren't there. Helian Vivian's voice was calm. Department Head Song had to admit that there was indeed such a possibility because of the rationality of the girl in front of him. However, he said, don't forget, Tong Tong is the victim this time. Department Head Song is right. Master Zhong sneered. Little girl, why don't you talk about Jing Zifeng? No one can prove that he didn't go out during that time, right? You're really whimsical. Instead of suspecting the person you should suspect, you're suspecting Miss Song. The cold young man who was named raised his eyes and glanced at Master Zhong. You can also list me as a suspect. It doesn't matter. His voice was very indifferent. It was as if he didn't take Master Zhong's words seriously at all. You heard me. Helian Vivian chuckled. The more she looked at the young man opposite her, the more she liked him. However, from her point of view, this young man was the least likely to be the murderer because if he really wanted to kill someone, it would be too simple. He could use his shikigami to kill someone without anyone noticing. Among the few famous ghost-chasing masters who came, only this young man was capable. Some of the others were just pretending, while others only knew some small tricks. The person that Helian Vivian had suspected from the beginning was Jing Zifeng. He was really here to catch ghosts. She still needed to investigate what the others were hiding. The sky outside was getting darker and darker. The sky was about to turn dark, but the torrential rain showed no signs of stopping. If it wasn't for the rain today, the Special Forces soldiers in the front yard might have noticed something. At the very least, they would have heard something. Unfortunately, this rain was heavy and rapid, mixed with the rumbling sound of thunder, completely covering the sound of the murderer's murder. However, if Celestial Master Zhong wasn't lying, then Wu Fan's time of death should have been after Celestial Master Zhong left. No water stains were found in the victim's room. In other words, the victim walked out of the room by herself. Why did he want to go out? It was raining heavily outside. When Helian Vivian thought of this, she suddenly paused. Celestial Master Zhong said that before he left, the victim said that someone was looking for him and that he still had something to do. Normally, everyone would think that since he came to the villa, he should be waiting for a call from the company. But in fact, there was no signal here. Only the phone in the villa was connected. In other words, the person who arranged to meet Master Wufan was in the villa. He used the internal phone in the villa that wouldn't leave a call record to ask Master Wufan out and then killed him. If that was the case, then there was a basic premise. The person who committed the crime at least knew Master Wufan. Moreover, there must have been a deal between the two of them that no one else knew about. Helian Vivian looked up and looked at the 4 suspects in front of her. She crossed out Celestial Master Zhong from the suspect list, leaving only 3 girls. It couldn't be Celestial Master Zhong. The murderer must have called Master Wufan after he left. The rest of the people were hiding some secrets. And one of these secrets was very likely to be evidence of murder. The hall fell into a deadlock for a moment, and uneasiness filled everyone's hearts. As the owner of the villa, Old Master Song naturally wouldn't let things continue like this. No matter what, everyone should eat something first. The road won't be blocked forever. There will always be a solution. As he spoke, he said to the servant at the side, Auntie Zhong, go and prepare. Let these children eat first. Auntie Zhong seemed to be thinking about something and didn't hear Old Master Song's words at all. Auntie Zhong. Adjutant Liang couldn't help but raise his voice. The minister is calling you. At this moment, Auntie Zhong came back to her senses and replied, Yes, I'll go and prepare now. There was something wrong with this servant. Almost immediately, Hellion Vivian's gaze locked onto Auntie Zhong. She looked at the back view that was full of worries and narrowed her eyes. She stood up and said to everyone with a light smile, I'll go take a look. Maybe I'll find something and catch the murderer as soon as possible. Department head Song didn't object. In some aspects, he still believed in this young lady's reasoning. Let Xiao Liang follow you and you can avoid danger. Thank you, Department head Song, but there's no need. My assistant is very versatile. With him by my side, I'll be safe. Hellion Vivian wasn't lying. However, no matter how one looked at Beligaju, it was hard to believe that his hands were stained with countless blood. Most importantly, his temperament was too good. Especially after wearing a military uniform, a certain highness had a noble and not evil aura. Such a person could be a commander, but he shouldn't be able to fight, right? The girl moved closer to Hellion Vivian and said, You should bring that special forces soldier with you. What if your boyfriend is ambushed? The girl thought that Hellion Vivian would definitely be worried if she said this. Unexpectedly, she laughed and said in a very pleasant voice, That's great. If the murderer can be so stupid as to walk into the trap, I won't have to waste any more effort to find her. Everyone who ambushed a certain highness didn't seem to end well. It had been a long time since she saw a certain highness beat someone up. Hehe, she was really looking forward to it. The girl was dumbfounded. What was going on? All right, little girl, I'll give you a task. Let's have a secret conversation. Hellion Vivian leaned over and whispered to the very lively girl, Help me pay more attention to who will leave the hall after I leave. Because only the person who leaves the hall can be the murderer. Chapter 1083. The girl said with a blank face. However, Hellion Wei did not expect her to watch over her. With Jing ziffing around, he would tell her if anything happened. Hellion Vivian smiled and disappeared from the hall with Beligaju. What she didn't know was that after she left, a pair of eyes hidden in the darkness faintly glowed as they looked at her from behind. Sister Zhong, do you need my help? It turned out that Hellion Vivian didn't go anywhere but came to the innermost kitchen of the villa. Sister Zhong was hiding something in her heart. Hearing Hellion Vivian's sudden call, the spoon in her hand accidentally fell to the ground. Hellion Vivian looked at her action. Sure enough, there was something wrong. No need. Sister Zhong turned around and smiled at Hellion Vivian awkwardly. It's easy to cook for so many people. Captain Jiang didn't come back. I wanted to cook a table of dishes for everyone. Now I can only change it to chicken curry and a soup of winter melon balls. You can drink it later to warm up. Hellion Vivian smiled and said okay, but she didn't leave. She sat aside, supported her face with one hand, and looked at Sister Zhong with a smile. Anyone who was looked at like this would feel a little uncomfortable. Sister Zhong turned on the stove. She was stunned when she turned around. What's wrong? Nothing. I just want to talk to you about something. Hellion Vivian smiled. Sister Zhong, you've been working in the Song family for a long time, right? Well, I've been working in the Song family since you were born. It's been 20 years. Aunt Zhong responded gently. She thought that Hellion Wei was hungry, so she took a vegetarian meatball that she had just prepared and handed it to her. Eat some first. After doing this, she seemed to think of something. She wiped her hands on the apron and explained, It's not dirty. I just washed my hands. I'll get another one. Hellion Vivian didn't wait for her to change. She directly held Sister Zhong's wrist and bit the vegetarian ball in her mouth. It's delicious, but it's a little hot. Sister Zhong smiled and was not as restrained as before. There's a lot here. Miss used to like it very much. After Hellion Wei ate the vegetarian meatball, she took another one and turned around to feed it to His Highness who was standing behind her. His Highness obviously refused this kind of thing. You eat it. Hellion Wei looked at him as if he didn't know what was good for him and stuffed the vegetarian meatball into her mouth. Her cheeks were bulging. You look like the Miss used to be. You're so cute. Helene Vivian couldn't stand the old woman's praise. The tips of her ears were a little red. But even so, she still didn't forget the purpose of her visit. Sister Zhong, do you know something but don't tell me? Sister Zhong suddenly froze. She looked at Helene Vivian. It seemed that she didn't expect that a girl younger than the Miss could be so smart. Is it about Miss Song? Helene Vivian's next sentence went straight to the point. In fact, like what Director Song said, she didn't go out even once, right? Yes. Sister Zhong sighed and was a little absent-minded. The Miss fell from upstairs some time ago. The wound on her face hasn't healed yet. She doesn't go out often, but sometimes she comes out. Master doesn't come home often and doesn't care enough about the Miss. The Miss lost her parents when she was young. She played with herself when she was young. It wasn't easy to wait until she entered high school to have a group of good friends. Unfortunately, it was fate. Since she came back from the seaside, she was upset and seldom came home. She always went out to play. Sometimes, she would bring some people to the courtyard. I know that the Miss is too lonely and wants someone to accompany her. But looking at the Miss like this, I really feel sorry for her. So you helped her hide the fact that she just went out of the room. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows. Sister Zhong immediately paused and then said excitedly, No, the Miss. Miss, you have to believe me. A person like the Miss won't kill people. Even if she has changed, she won't hurt others. I didn't say that she must be the murderer. Helene Vivian comforted Sister Zhong. There are so many suspects now. Miss Song is just one of them. Sister Zhong supported herself on the chopping board and heaved a sigh of relief. Then, she heard a clang. At this moment, all the lights in the villa dimmed. Helene Vivian's intuition told her that something was going to happen. She didn't stay in the kitchen any longer. She immediately stood up and strode to the living room. What's going on? Why is there a power outage? Did the power switch off? It can't be. There's no electricity in the villa at this time. What should we do? Old Master Song was still sitting in his original seat. He pressed down hard with his dragon-headed walking stick. Be quiet. Fortunately, he could control the situation. Otherwise, once the power went out, the people in the living room would run around and it would only give the murderer an opportunity to take advantage of. There weren't many candles in the villa. There were only a few short red candles lit when they were eating Western food. Sister Zhong immediately took them to the living room, lit them all, and put them on the coffee table. Helene Vivian turned on the flashlight on her phone and used the light to scan the area. She narrowed her eyes. Where are the female university student and Leah? They went to the toilet. The girl didn't forget what Helene Vivian asked her to do. Wei's long, shapely eyebrows furrowed tightly at this moment. Immediately after, a scream came from the toilet. This time, Helene Vivian wasn't the first to arrive. The first person to arrive was Jing Zifeng. Helene Vivian had said more than once that this young man was very smart. He was indeed smart. After Leah and the female university student said that they wanted to go to the toilet, he followed behind them. At this time, anyone who acted alone was worth paying attention to. However, even he didn't expect that the villa would have a power outage at this time. Seeing that there was nothing in the bathroom, he knocked on each of their doors and told the two women that he had to leave for a while and go back to find something to light up the place. The two people in the bathroom also agreed. Unexpectedly, he had only left for 3 minutes when the screams behind him rang out. Jing Zifeng didn't hesitate. He immediately turned around and ran in the direction of the toilet. He pushed the wooden door with all his strength. When he saw that he couldn't open it at all, his eyes changed. With a sudden force, a sword formed by chi faintly appeared in his left hand. Chapter 1084. A loud bang was heard. The energy sword fell and split the wooden door in half. Helene Vivian's guess was right. If this young man wanted to, he could kill anyone in the villa except her and His Highness in an instant. When Jing Zifeng barged in, the female university student's hands were full of water. Her fingers were trembling in fear as she pointed out the window in fear. There's someone there. Someone is standing outside the villa. Jing Zifeng looked up. He could vaguely see a figure in the rain. Moreover, that figure seemed to be dragging something in its hand. Just as the young man was frowning, the group of people behind him also arrived. A bolt of lightning fell. Through the ventilation glass window, people finally saw what the figure was dragging. It was a person. Because of this scene, everyone's eyes were filled with unprecedented fear. Who was the person she was dragging? Who was missing? Miss Auntie Jong covered her trembling lips. The person she was dragging was wearing Mrs. clothes. Department Head Song's expression changed. Xiao Liang. Yes. Deputy Liang didn't stop at all and immediately rushed out. Logically speaking, the speed of a special forces soldier should be very fast, not to mention that the other party was dragging someone. Although the structure of the villa was a little complicated, it was not convenient for him to track them. However, Deputy Liang still accurately determined the person's location. However, he watched as she dragged the person around a corner. When Deputy Liang chased after her again, she disappeared. There was not a trace of her at all. Even though he was from the army, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat when he saw this strange scene. After returning, Deputy Liang's entire body was drenched. He told him everything that he had seen just now. Old Master Song's back trembled. He reached out and clutched his chest. Tong Tong, my granddaughter. Department head. Deputy Liang immediately supported his superior and quickly took out the medicine box he carried with him. He poured out a few pills and had Department Head Song swallow them. After taking the medicine, Department Head Song slowly recovered. However, it was obvious that he no longer had his previous spirit. White hair slid down his forehead, and he looked like he had aged many years in an instant. It's her. She's back. The female university student suddenly shouted and grabbed Yuan Wu's collar. You saw it too, didn't you? That person just now, that person's back view, and the clothes she was wearing were clearly Wu Taotao's favorite clothes in the past. She must be back. She wants to take us away, take all of us away. Wu Daodao. Helian Vivian turned her head to look at the 4 students present. Every one of them had a nightmarish look of fear on their faces. It's her. The lively girl's lips turned pale. It's really her. What should we do? Xiao Qing, what should we do? Is it because the game wasn't finished yet? The female university student named Xiao Qing shook her head. I don't know anything. Are we going to die? Are we going to die? Hearing the word die, the girl suddenly shivered and denied, No, there's no reason for that. My grandmother said that if you don't do anything wrong in your life, you won't be afraid of ghosts knocking on your door in the middle of the night. She has no reason to take us away. But she has already taken Tong Tong away. Next, who will be next? Xiao Qing seemed to have thought of something, and her eyes suddenly shook. She pointed at herself and said, It's me. I'm the 3rd person to sign the contract. The next person she's going to take away is me. Helian Vivian frowned. No, it shouldn't be in this order. Xiao Qing, calm down. The girl reached out and hugged her good friend standing in front of her. It's okay, we'll all be okay. Master and the others are here, right? When Xiao Qing heard the word master, she suddenly raised her head and looked at Helian Vivian. It's all because of you. You said that the murderer wasn't an outsider, but one of us. Now it's okay. Tong Tong is going to be killed because of you. If you don't know how to catch ghosts, then say there are no ghosts here. You liar. What on my OG, bar? You're just here to make money. Facing the female university student's accusation, Helian Vivian didn't even blink. She was as calm as ever. Xiao Qing was so angry that her eyes were red and tears kept flowing. Do you know how many years we've known Tong Tong? Return her to us, you liar. You big liar. Sigh. As if he didn't want to cause enough trouble, Master Zhong pretended to sigh at the side. I've long said that the malicious spirit in the villa isn't easy to deal with, but these juniors think very highly of themselves and even suspect that we're the culprits. Now, I can only do something and try to see where this evil spirit has gone. After such an incident, Department Head Song's thoughts were in a mess. He didn't say anything, but it was obvious that he no longer trusted Helian Vivian as he did in the beginning. This was the effect that Master Zhong wanted. He wanted to put on a show in front of department head Song. As for that evil spirit, he didn't dare to really catch it. After a while, he stayed in the crowded hall. With so many people, it wouldn't be so easy for the evil spirit to make a move. Master Zhong's plan was good. Right now, these university students needed someone to jump out and do a ritual, especially Xiao Qing. As she brushed past Hellion Vivian, she glared hard at her. Liar. Beligaju obviously wanted to move. However, Hellion Vivian held his hand and interlocked their fingers. Her eyes were clear. Whether you believe it or not, there's no aura of a malicious spirit here. The murderer has always been a human. Young lady, it's already good enough that department head Song didn't lock you up or ask you to get lost. Why are you still insisting on your fallacy? What's going on? Master Zhong gritted his teeth. Without waiting for Hellion Vivian to turn around, she met Master Zhong's eyes. A loud thump was heard. Master Zhong seemed to have been attacked by some invisible gas. He knelt on the ground with a loud thud. Even his chin hit the threshold heavily. It was so painful that tears streamed down his face. He bit his tongue, and his mouth was deformed from the pain. Hellion Vivian didn't need to look to know that this was the work of a certain highness. Jing Zifeng seemed to have noticed something as well. He suddenly turned to the side and stood in front of Beligaju. Who are you? Just now, the exorcist sword on his back was trembling. This man who looked incomparably elegant was definitely not a simple human. Chapter 1085. Hellion Vivian patted the young man's shoulder. Child, the most important thing now is to catch the murderer. Someone committed a crime in front of you. Can you tolerate this? The young man immediately withdrew his gaze from Beligaju. Of course, he couldn't tolerate this. Beligaju looked at him with a faint smile, opened his mouth, and bit off the black glove on his left hand. He said casually, "Get out of my way." Hellion Vivian grabbed his highness again, and then met Jing Zifeng's probing gaze. "Didn't I tell you? He's my assistant." Jing Zifeng looked at her. His eyes were clearly saying that her assistant wasn't human at all. Hellion Vivian patted the young man's shoulder. Child, the most important thing now is to catch the murderer. Someone committed a crime in front of you. Can you tolerate this? The young man immediately withdrew his gaze from Beligaju. Of course, he couldn't tolerate this. When the matter here was settled, he would ask this man. He would go and find the murderer. After thinking, Jing Zifeng turned around and left, leaving his Shikigami behind. The little Shikigami around the young man were speechless. Damn it, little master, you're leaving. This person is clearly a Shikigami. As if he sensed the thoughts of the Shikigami, Beligaju bit off his other glove with a faint smile, and looked at them with half-curved eyes. Those little Shikigami immediately straightened their backs. One by one, they raised their hands, put them on their soft and flat faces, and made a gesture of shutting up. But in their hearts, they were crying. My little master, even if you want to leave, you should take us with you. Don't you see that your cute Shikigami are missing? Woo-woo, the big devil. They had actually encountered the legendary Great Devil. How unlucky were they? Arth. Sensing the fear of the little Shikigami, Hellion Vivian bent down and put them all into her sleeve. Then she glanced at his highness, which meant that he didn't want to scare them. Of course, Beligaju wouldn't argue with these little people. The only one who made him want to kill was Zhong Tianxia, who didn't know why he suddenly knelt down. His entire leg was in pain. After meeting the surprised gazes of the university students, he waved his hand in order to save his face and said, "The ground is too slippery. If you're not careful, you'll fall. Be careful." Hellion Vivian sneered but did not expose him. However, there seemed to be one person missing. Hellion Vivian suddenly looked back. Wait a minute. Leah isn't here either. Upon hearing Leah's name, Celestial Master Zhong's pained expression finally changed. Xiao Qing sneered, "Now this Master Hellion knows how to be nervous. Don't worry, she came with me. She's still in the bathroom next door." Hellion Vivian didn't relax her vigilance because of her words. She strode into another bathroom. The door was locked from the inside. She couldn't pull it open at all. Miss Leah, Are you in there? Celestial Master Zhong couldn't help but go forward and knock hard on the door. There was no answer. Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. Could something have happened to Leah? Hellion Vivian's eyes darkened. She wanted to kick the door open. I'm here. Perhaps because of fear, Leah's voice was trembling and hoarse. I don't dare to go out. It's too scary. The power is off. I don't dare to move at all. It seemed that the news about Leah on the internet was true. It was said that although this witch could predict ghosts and good luck, she was very afraid of the dark. Once she was in the dark, her entire body would stiffen. She didn't even dare to speak, let alone move. Celestial Master Zhong heaved a sigh of relief and said, "It's okay. We're all outside. Don't be afraid. You can see everyone when you come out." Okay. A rustling sound came from the bathroom, like the sound of a skirt zipper. Hellion Vivian and Celestial Master Zhong could hear it. The latter's face was a little hot, and no one knew what bad things he was thinking. After a while, Leah opened the door with trembling hands. She was scared out of her wits. When she saw that there was someone outside the door, she immediately threw herself into Celestial Master Zhong's arms. With a beauty in his arms, Celestial Master Zhong was naturally overjoyed. He reached out and patted her back. All right. It's fine. It's all in the past. I saw someone outside. She was dragging something with all her might. Leah trembled. My sixth sense tells me that this person shouldn't be here at all because she died a long time ago. She died by the sea. When the 4 university students heard this, their faces turned even paler. Unlike Celestial Master Zhong, Miss Leah was especially popular on the internet and was very popular with young people. They had seen with their own eyes how she was a live-streamed fortune-teller on the internet. She was extremely accurate. Now, even she said that the person who dragged Tong Tong away was already dead. That proved that Wu Daodao had really come back. Because the only person who died by the sea was Wu Daodao. What was she trying to do by dragging Tong Tong away? When the 4 university students thought of this, they felt a chill in their hearts. Xiao Qing endured her fear and clenched her fists. She looked at Hellion Vivian with a vicious gaze. What did I say? If we want to believe someone, we should believe Celestial Master Zhong. We shouldn't believe a liar. Hellion Vivian ignored her. Whether it was Celestial Master Zhong or the witch Leah, who was very popular on the internet, the two of them obviously didn't have any ability to catch ghosts. They just used the information they heard and the customer's reaction to guess the mental activities of people and make some speculations related to ghosts. Some of the older aunties believed in their tricks. Anyone who had read a little psychology book would know that they were just a bunch of fancy tricks. Moreover, Leah was only good at reading people's fortunes online. She rarely read people's fortunes on TV. Young people only thought that she was keeping a low profile. But they never thought about the real reason. She didn't read people's fortunes on TV because she was afraid that people would know that she couldn't read anything. In this day and age, game streamers had to find someone to carry them. Not to mention reading fortunes. This was more similar to Celestial Master Zhong. However, compared to the two, Leah's route was more in line with the tastes of young people. Her age, appearance, and temperament were all very advantageous. Hellion Vivian knew what these two people were thinking. They had originally planned to leave, but after knowing that the monk was dead, they were obviously flustered, afraid that there would really be some ghost. Later, Deputy Liang said that the road was blocked. The two of them knew that they couldn't leave, so they pretended that they could predict the future and said that they had sensed the existence of a malicious spirit. On one hand, it was to protect their image as masters. On the other hand, it was to get the reward given by Department Head Song. Chapter 1086. Hellion Vivian had met many people like this before, so she didn't care and let them do whatever they wanted. She only glanced inside the bathroom. Other than the window being half open, she didn't find anything. Everything could not be more normal. Song Tong Tong was dragged away, and Auntie Zhong was sadder than anyone else. After crying for a while, she seemed unwilling to give up. She went upstairs to take a look at Song Tong Tong's room. It was empty, and there was no one inside. No one could eat dinner anymore. Adjutant Liang and another Special Forces soldier each held a flashlight. They didn't even put on their raincoats and rushed out of the villa. They were going to look for someone. Even if there really was a ghost. For the sake of the minister, they had to find the miss. Even if what they brought back was just a corpse, the torrential rain was a huge hindrance to their search. In addition, there were no lights in the surroundings. It was really difficult to find anything in the darkness. Even Adjutant Liang started to believe that ghosts really existed. If he didn't, what kind of person could he be? How fast could he have disappeared into the boundless rain just like that? Unless that person wasn't human at all. At this moment, in the hall, Master Zhong began to sit down and gesture with his yellow talismans and peachwood sword. The university students sat around him and didn't dare to leave Master Zhong's side. The power supply facility had not been repaired. Everyone was relying on the few remaining candles to hold on. Celestial Master Zhong insisted that it was all the work of malicious ghosts. Hellion Vivian glanced at him and prepared to leave with Beligaju to look for clues. Should she say that she was too arbitrary? But she didn't think that her deduction was wrong. Hellion Vivian had always been like this. It didn't matter if you said that she was arrogant or arrogant. She would never change her mind easily. There must be something that she hadn't thought of. She had to find that as soon as possible. First, she had to restore the power. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to find any clues. This storm had affected the case too much. If she didn't find anything today, all the evidence would be washed away by the rain when the sun rose. Hellion Vivian first looked at the internal switch that controlled the power in the villa. No one had touched it. Then, was there a problem with the outer gate? Hellion Vivian narrowed her eyes and walked around the villa with a black umbrella. Only then did she know that the outer gate was placed in the backyard, very close to the bathroom on the first floor and the swimming pool outside the courtyard. There was still no problem with the gate, but the wires had been cut. After being damp, those wires could no longer be used. This was a very ruthless move by the murderer. Why did he cut off the electricity in the villa? Just for the convenience of committing murder? Or was there some other reason? Hellion Vivian looked at the flickering candlelight in the hall. Zhong Tianxi's chanting continued, and the thunder was still rumbling. This case seemed to be more complicated than she had imagined. However, one thing would not change. The murderer must be very hostile to her now. He wanted to use ghosts to cover up his crimes. However, she noticed the problem. That person must be looking for a chance to get rid of her. Hellion Wei smiled faintly. If that's the case. If that was the case, the college student named Xiao Qing seemed to hate her very much. Hellion Vivian looked at the cut wires in front of her and pondered. She didn't come to a conclusion immediately. Instead, she took out her phone and took a photo of the main switch. Beligaju stood behind her, holding a pure black umbrella in his hand, like a perfect demon deacon. After Hellion Wei took the photo, she planned to bring His Highness in. Unexpectedly, as soon as she turned around, she saw Jing Zifeng standing outside the bathroom, muttering something to himself. What's wrong? Hellion Vivian walked to his side. The young man didn't even open his umbrella, and his hand was wrapped in a black bandage. It's a little strange. Tell me. Jing Zifeng was the only one who understood now. The young man didn't care that he was drenched in the rain, and there were still drops of water on his handsome face. I can't find the body. Huh? Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. The little paper shikigami stuck out of her sleeve and said, if someone died, little master can immediately locate it. I can only locate that monk. Only then did the young man remember that he didn't bring his shikigami with him. He stuffed these idiots into his arms in a not-so-gentle manner. Jing Zifeng didn't speak much, and he had just left the mountain recently, so he hadn't been able to communicate well with others. He was still wondering if the other party wouldn't understand him. Hellion Vivian asked in return, in other words, other than Master Wufan, the others aren't dead yet. The murderer didn't kill the person who was dragged away at all? Yes. Jing Zifeng nodded and looked at Bailey Jiaoju, who was behind her, without hiding his hostility. Hellion Vivian naturally noticed the young man's gaze. She chuckled and said, don't worry, he won't kill anyone in front of me. What is he? Jing Zifeng was a little annoyed that he couldn't see through the other party's true identity. Hellion Vivian didn't say anything. She could see that the young man wasn't weak. She didn't want to make an enemy for a certain highness. Although the young man's personality was very compatible with hers, as an overbearing president, protecting her other half was the most important thing. I can't say. Hellion Vivian's tone was very indifferent. The 14-year-old Jing Zifeng frowned. Why? He thought that they could already communicate with each other. This was the first time he wanted to be friends with the humans at the foot of the mountain. Because I'm an overbearing president. Hellion Vivian coolly gave the young man a reason. Jing Zifeng really wanted to pull Hellion Vivian back and ask her what the relationship between the two was. He was being bullied because he had just left the mountain and didn't know the rules. The overbearing presidents at the foot of the mountain were all men. However, the young man didn't stubbornly follow behind Hellion Vivian and ask. Because he had a shortcut. Come out. After the young man walked into the villa, he began to shake his clothes. The paper shikigami revealed their small heads. The young man lowered his eyes. Who is that man? These shikigami were all given to him by his master. They had been by his master's side for thousands of years. It was impossible that they couldn't detect the other party's true identity. The strange thing was that the shikigami began to look at each other, and then they began to shrink back in unison. One word, play dead. Jing Zifeng began to shake his clothes again, but this time, the paper shikigami didn't come out. Even when he threatened to take them to the rain, they only shook a little and didn't do anything else. The young man frowned. What was going on? Chapter 1087. The little shikigami were speechless. Woo-woo, little master, it's not that we don't want to tell you, but the look in the great demon's eyes before we left was too scary. That look clearly said that if we dared to reveal his identity, he would turn us into ashes. It's not as simple as being drenched in water, it's turning us into ashes, do you understand? Those little guys seem to be very afraid of you. Hellion Vivian glanced sideways at His Highness. Bailey Jiaoju reached out his hand and tucked her hair behind her ear. Then, he said casually, do I? I'm so friendly to them. Hellion Vivian was speechless. Don't use your friendly so casually in the future. It's too lethal. Hearing this, Beligaju chuckled. He put Hellion Vivian's hand to his lips and kissed it. That depends on how Master performs tonight. I'll catch the murderer soon. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows confidently. You don't believe me? Beligaju paused. What he said was obviously not the same as what she meant. I believe you. The man smiled again, his eyes dark. Hellion Vivian chuckled. Then why are you speaking in such a perfunctory manner? Beligaju liked her like this. He pulled her over and said in a noble manner, how would I dare to be perfunctory with my master? Hellion Vivian knew that she couldn't win against His Highness, so she leaned over and stole a kiss. Then, she looked like she had gained something. Beligaju originally wanted to let his little phoenix play here slowly, but now it seemed that it was better to solve the case as soon as possible. In this way, he could do whatever he wanted to her. Hellion Vivian didn't know what His Highness was thinking. She was only thinking about what had happened today. Many things kept repeating in her mind. Some were too messy, and some were too complicated. She needed to sort them out. Seeing them come in, Aunt Zhong wanted to add more bowls and chopsticks. However, Xiao Qing held Auntie Zhong's hand. Auntie Zhong, some people will say anything to cheat money. It's a waste of food to let her eat. The pain of losing Song Tong Tong made Auntie Zhong's eyes dim. She shook her head, pushed Xiao Qing's hand away, and walked into the kitchen. Xiao Qing completely disliked Hellion Vivian. Zhong Tianxia also glanced at that person arrogantly, then put away the peachwood sword. He pretended to be serious and said to Xiao Qing, the water vapor on this malicious spirit is too strong. We can only wait until the rain stops before we can subdue her. But don't worry, she won't come out to cause trouble for the time being. I've already set up a barrier here. As long as we don't leave this place, no one will be in trouble. Hellion Vivian sneered in her heart. This celestial Master Zhong was not stupid. He knew that the murderer would not choose to make a move when everyone was around. However, the university students could not figure this out. Their trust had made them completely lose their ability to think, especially Xiao Qing. After hearing Celestial Master Zhong's words, she promised, "None of us will leave this place. If we go to the bathroom again, the two of us will go together." "That's right. That's how it should be." Celestial Master Zhong adjusted his tone and sat at the dining table. "We've already lost Miss Song. We can't just watch someone drag the malicious spirit away. I've just finished the ritual, so I need to replenish some energy. The malicious spirit's influence is too great. I'm afraid the power here can't be restored. You guys should eat something. That way, you'll have the strength to last until dawn." "Okay." The people who had no appetite immediately picked up their cutlery when they heard Celestial Master Zhong's words. Hellion Vivian walked over, enlarged the photo on the phone, and handed it to Yuan Wu. Yuan Wu immediately frowned. "What's this?" When Xiao Qing saw this, she put her chopsticks on the wooden table. "Yuan Wu, don't forget who dragged Tong Tong away because of..." Yuan Wu glanced at Xiao Qing and ignored her. He anxiously said to Hellion Vivian, "How did this happen?" "Obviously, someone cut the wires." Hellion Vivian's voice was very calm. She pulled out a chair and sat on it lazily. Xiao Qing sneered. "You're making things up again." Celestial Master Zhong said that the power was cut off because of the influence of a malicious spirit. "Furthermore, we've checked the gate and didn't find any problems." "How could someone cut the wires?" "That's because we didn't check the gate outside the villa." Yuan Wu interrupted Xiao Qing. He took Hellion Vivian's phone and showed it to everyone. Xiao Qing's expression obviously changed. She looked as if she had been punched by someone. Hellion Vivian glanced at her. "There's no need for me to explain in detail. Everyone should be able to see the traces of the wires being cut. This is obviously done by someone. It's not because of the influence of a malicious spirit. So what if that's the case?" Xiao Qing's face flushed red. "Tong Tong has already been taken away. That person is Wu Daodao. All of us saw it." Hellion Vivian picked up the teacup on the table and took a sip of water. She slowly smiled and said, "Xiao Qing, how much do you want the murderer to be a ghost? If it's a ghost, do you think you can escape? Do you think these little tricks can protect you?" "What do you mean by that?" Xiao Qing stood up, so angry that her hands were trembling. Hellion Vivian stood up, her eyes cold. "I don't like people interfering with my investigation. It's obvious that someone deliberately pushed the blame onto the so-called ghost after committing the crime. As for the yellow talismans that Master Zhong pasted, even the words on the talisman paper were printed. What can they do?" You. Master Zhong pointed at Hellion Vivian and said angrily, "I'm warning you, don't talk nonsense and slander my professionalism." "Professionalism?" Hellion Vivian sneered and said to the youth who had just entered, "Jingzifeng, draw a yellow talisman and show Master Zhong what professionalism is." The youth did not speak. He nodded his head and took out a piece of paper. Then, he bit his finger and a talisman seal appeared. Following that, the most ordinary piece of paper glowed and flew towards the corner of the entrance. It stuck to the wind chime that was hanging on the wall. "Professionalism." The youth retracted his hand and said 2 words. He sat beside Hellion Vivian. The rest of the people were obviously dumbfounded. Compared to the youth, Master Zhong's so-called method did look like a trick. Master Zhong's expression also changed. He knew that he had kicked an iron plate this time. He had seen so many masters, but none of them dared to take out a piece of paper and turn it into a talisman. Hellion Vivian looked at him. "Master Zhong, do you want to use your professional knowledge to tell me why Zifeng pasted the yellow talisman on the wind chime?" Chapter 1088. Because. Master Zhong clenched his fists tightly. He opened his mouth twice in a row but didn't make a sound because he really couldn't say it. He knew some feng shui, but he bought some books and casually taught himself. He didn't expect that after so many years of lying and deceiving, he would make many rich businessmen believe him. Gradually, he became famous in the industry, but in reality, he only knew a little about this industry. How could he know so much? At this point, the university students could see that Master Zhong was in a panic. Little Qing refused to give up and grabbed his arm. Master Zhong, quickly tell this woman that you know. But she waited for a long time, but Master Zhong didn't say anything. The truth couldn't be more obvious. Xiao Qing let go of her hand and looked like she had lost her soul. It was useless for Master Zhong to pester her endlessly. He didn't have any real ability at all. Hellion Vivian walked over and picked up the wind chime. She casually threw it into the trash can. Because the wind chime gathers yin and is a ghost-attracting item. Hanging it here will only make the aura of the villa extremely turbid. I didn't do anything. Perhaps everyone doesn't believe in my ability, but you should have seen Jing Zifeng's ability. Since he said that it was a human who killed someone, then it must be a human who killed someone. Moreover, he has the ability to locate a corpse. There is only one corpse here now, and that is Master Wu Fan. In other words, the person who was dragged away isn't dead. You're saying that Miss is still safe? Aunt Zhong's eyes immediately lit up. Hellion Vivian nodded. It seems so for now. Then who was it? Who cut the wires from the outside and deliberately wore Wu Taotao's clothes to hide Tong Tong? Yuan Wu's eyes were red as he slammed his fist on the table. Hellion Vivian's eyes lit up. No, he didn't just want to hide Miss Song, but he didn't have time to kill anyone because there were still 2 special forces soldiers here that he had to worry about. Miss Hellion, are you saying that there's another person hiding outside the villa that we don't know about? Old Master Song seemed to have heard the discussion in the hall and walked over with his walking stick. What he didn't expect was that Hellion Vivian actually shook her head. No, I always thought that the murderer was among us. Are you crazy? Xiao Qing was really about to break down from Hellion Vivian's words. We're all in the villa and have never gone out. How are we supposed to turn on the power switch and then go through the hall to the 3rd floor after turning on the power switch? We'll be discovered before we can drag Tong Tong down from the 3rd floor, okay? Can you not be so ignorant? It was getting more and more ridiculous. What did Deputy Liang just say? He said that the murderer disappeared in the blink of an eye. Who could be faster than a Special Forces soldier? Unless she was not human at all. Everyone knew this. Do you think we haven't even graduated from primary school? Am I supposed to listen to your lies? I believe her. Jing interrupted Xiao Qing. Because of the plate of vegetarian meatballs, he was completely on Hellion Vivian's side. The murderer is among us. When Xiao Qing was facing Jing Xiaofeng, she wasn't so angry. After all, Jing Xiaofeng's move just now was too powerful. He was simply a godlike figure. She wouldn't go against anyone for no reason. Seriously, I really don't know what to say. Xiao Qing sat back on the chair angrily. In the face of such a commotion, Hellion Vivian only said to Old Master Song calmly, I need to go upstairs and take a look. Old Master Song actually believed Xiao Qing's analysis. Compared to what Hellion Vivian said, he felt that the possibility of there being someone outside the villa was higher. However, he didn't stop Hellion Vivian. Instead, he said to Auntie Zhong, follow Miss Hellion upstairs. Open the door for her whichever room she wants to see. Yes. Auntie Zhong only thought that as long as her miss was still alive, everything would turn around. No one knew what Hellion Vivian was thinking. In fact, even the university students didn't quite believe her later deduction. No matter what, it was too ridiculous. Time didn't allow it. The murderer must have come from outside. Old Master Song was also deep in thought. After a while, he said, go outside and search again. See if there are any suspicious people nearby. Yes. Adjutant Liang accepted the order. He saluted and rushed into the night again. Old Master Song's eyes swept over Celestial Master Zhong, who wished he could shrink his head into a ball. Take off all these messy yellow talismans. From now on, no one is to leave the hall. The candlelight on the dining table was still swaying, shining on everyone's faces. They were all a little flustered and uneasy. Auntie Zhong walked in front of Hellion Vivian, holding a candle in her hand. Miss Hellion, which room do you want to see? Miss Song just had an accident. She should have left some clues there. Hellion Vivian was also thinking about the problem of time. When Auntie Jong heard her say this, she immediately opened the door for her. You can look around as much as you want. As long as you can find Miss, you can look at her however you want. As soon as Hellion Vivian entered the room, she felt a dampness that hadn't seen the sun for a long time. It was probably because Song Tong Tong didn't go out often and it was raining outside. The electricity wasn't turned on, so the room was dark. Hellion Vivian walked in and deliberately glanced at the floor. There weren't any water stains on it. There were a few plastic surgery magazines scattered on the bed, and there were many cosmetics and jewelry boxes on the dressing table. It was obvious that the owner of the room was a very materialistic girl. This is... Hellion Vivian's phone shook and hit the wall on the other side. Miss Lee Ya's photo? Auntie Jong nodded and said, that's right. It's that divination master. Miss likes this person very much. Not only does she always watch her live broadcast online, but she also usually buys clothes from her. She thinks that whatever this master wears looks good. She admires her very much. Fan. Hellion Vivian moved the light away from her phone and looked outside the window. The view here was very good, and she could almost see the entire courtyard. She stood there as if she was thinking about something. She was probably calculating the route, but no matter how she calculated, time didn't allow her to do so. Hellion Vivian retracted her gaze and picked up the magazine on the bed. Miss Song also had plastic surgery? Auntie Jong sighed and said, Miss was never like this in the past, but for some reason, she became very infatuated with these things. She's already very good-looking in person. Hellion Vivian had seen Song Tong Tong's photo before. She was indeed very good-looking. Although she didn't have a sharp face, she had delicate features and was very elegant. She looked very much like a gentle celebrity from before. Was there still a need for plastic surgery? Chapter 1089. There were also a few black invitations sent to them in the magazine. Just as old Master Song had said at the beginning, the person who had written to them was indeed Song Tong Tong. Hellion Vivian raised her head again and glanced at the luxurious cosmetics on the dressing table. Her eyes darkened. Auntie Jong noticed her gaze and placed a bottle of fairy water on the table. Miss likes her cosmetics the most. She can't bear to see them dirty. She'll throw a tantrum at anyone who touches them. Her tone was as if she was talking about her own child. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. So when you handed me the meatballs, you were afraid that I'd find them dirty because she said so. She was also the one who injured your wrist, right? Auntie Jong's outstretched hand suddenly paused, and even her back was a little stiff. That accident was too big a blow to miss. Master only comes back during the new year. She must be very scared, but she doesn't know who to tell, so she threw a tantrum at me. It's just a small matter, nothing much. Seeing the look in Auntie Jong's eyes, Hellion Vivian didn't continue this topic. Instead, she held her phone and turned on the light as she looked at the photo on the bedside table. The photo was a group photo of several university students together. However, the strange thing was that a hole had been burned in the photo with fire. And the person who had been burned was Song Tong Tong herself. Hellion Wei's brows furrowed tightly. What's going on with this photo? Who would put a photo of themselves on the bedside table? Auntie Jong shook her head. The photo has been like this for a while. I also asked Miss. She threw a big tantrum and seemed very scared. She told me to ignore it and get out. Actually, at that time, I was afraid that something would happen to Miss, so I told Master everything that happened at home. Only then did Master believe that something unclean was following Miss. Was that really the case? Hellion Vivian stood up again and shone her phone on the wall. Her eyes sparkled. She thought that she should know what was going on, however, there was still one thing she didn't understand. Why did the person disappear when Deputy Liang rushed out? If this wasn't explained clearly, there was no way the murderer would give in obediently. When the time came, the other party would definitely use this to refute her. He had to find a way to find decisive evidence to make the other party speechless. Wait a minute. If she was the murderer, what would she be most upset about? Hellion Vivian sat down and closed her eyes. She began to draw a picture in her mind. It was raining today, and it would definitely be inconvenient to drag someone along. Furthermore, this person must not be discovered by others. Therefore, he had to hide the person in his hands first. Hide it. Helene Vivian's eyes suddenly widened. Her gaze was as sharp as a knife. Auntie Jong, let's go downstairs. Helene Vivian put away her phone and stood up. Aunt Jong was puzzled. Aren't we going to continue looking? I'm not looking anymore. Helene Vivian put her left hand into her trouser pocket casually and said with a mischievous smile, because the murderer is downstairs. What? Auntie Jong was shocked by her words, and her hand that was holding the candle trembled. Xiao Qing saw Helene Vivian walking down the stairs and laughed mockingly. Anyone could see her hostility towards Helene Vivian. Helene Vivian didn't have the time to pay attention to her. The first thing she said when she went downstairs was, "The person who was dragged away wasn't Song Tong Tong, but one of us." Oh my God, what nonsense is she spouting again? Xiao Qing couldn't stand Helene Vivian's wild imagination. Look carefully, we're all here. Even the special forces that Uncle Song sent out are back. You actually said that one of us was dragged away? Master Helene, are you sure your brain is normal? Or is there something wrong with your eyes? Master Zhong also chimed in, my magic isn't good, but I've never done anything to scam people. Some of the younger generation, on the other hand, have already started making up stories in order to get the final commission. This isn't a story because the murderer used the same method to kill someone half a year ago. Helene Vivian looked at Auntie Zhong. I'm sorry, Auntie Zhong, but I have to tell you a piece of bad news. Miss Song Tong Tong is no longer in this world. Auntie Zhong's eyes widened as she looked at Helene Vivian. Didn't you just say? Are you trying to slap your own face? Xiao Qing sneered and said, you just told Uncle Song that Tong Tong was fine and that you couldn't find the location of the body. Now you're saying that Tong Tong was killed? Master Helene, I don't think you should be a yin-yang master. You should go on Weibo and tell jokes. Let's see how the netizens will scold you. You've inverted right and wrong in front of Uncle Song time and time again. Where do you think this is? This is the military. Helene Vivian looked up and glanced at her. It was just a glance, but it made Xiao Qing's entire body freeze. She had never seen such a cold gaze before. It was as if she could kill her at any time, and it seeped into her bones. When Helene Vivian saw that she had quietened down, she slowly said, I only said that the person who was dragged away was fine, and Song Tong Tong wasn't killed here. It was half a year ago, when you guys went to the beach. What do you mean by that? It wasn't just the juniors. Even old Master Song stood up after hearing this. His eyes shook violently, and his fingers pressed heavily on his dragon-headed walking stick. Ridiculous. It's simply ridiculous. Little Qing is right. I've really indulged you too much. Master Helene, do you know what you're saying? Before today, my granddaughter had always been fine. Could it be that the granddaughter who has been by my side for the past 6 months is a dead person? When Adjutant Liang saw how agitated he was afraid that the old minister's heart would relapse again. He supported old Master Song and tried to calm him down. I know that these things are difficult for your family to accept. Helene Vivian looked at Director Song. But the one who has been by your side for the past 6 months is not your biological granddaughter, Song Tong Tong, but Wu Daodao, who everyone thought was dead. Daodao? The lively girl widened her eyes. How is that possible? Helene Vivian's voice was very calm. Nothing is impossible. I just saw the photo of you together. Wu Daodao and Miss Song are about the same height and body shape. As long as you change your face, you can completely replace her. You mean she. The girl seemed to have guessed something, and her face completely lost color. That's right. Helene Vivian hit the nail on the head. She has plastic surgery to look like Miss Song and deceived all of you. Chapter 1090. Hearing this, Little Qing's body suddenly froze. Helene Vivian continued, when Wu Daodao invited all of you back then, she had already arranged everything, including the soul pawning game. Think about it carefully. You didn't see her for nearly 3 months before this. When you saw her again, it was at the seaside when night had just fallen. None of you saw how she looked after her plastic surgery because she was wearing a mask the entire time. Of course, plastic surgery was too serious, so she did need to wear a mask to prevent infection. However, all of you ate barbecue that day. There are many things to abstain from after plastic surgery. If she was really afraid of infection, she should be more worried about the barbecue, not the sea breeze. Furthermore, all of you drank and fell asleep for no reason. You have no idea what happened in between. When you woke up, all you saw was a corpse floating on the sea. Yeah, but Tong Tong was standing beside us at that time, the girl said. Hellion Vivian's voice was very calm. The one standing beside you wasn't Miss Song at all, but Wu Daodao, who had secretly replaced her. In fact, she had already undergone plastic surgery a long time ago and had already passed her safe period, so she wasn't afraid of eating barbecue. She wore a mask the entire time, not to prevent infection, but because she didn't want all of you to see how she looked after plastic surgery, because only then could she possibly complete her grand plan. Then, she suggested playing the soul pawning game. This game could allow her to avoid a lot of trouble after she killed someone. When something happened, everyone would think that it was a ghost causing trouble. After all, the victim's death was too tragic. At that time, all of you were still in university, so perhaps there were some things that you hadn't come into contact with, so you didn't think carefully about why such a death would appear. If it was really a ghost, all she had to do was drag the victim into the sea and drown her. Why go through the trouble of scratching her face until it was unrecognizable? In criminal psychology, this action has two meanings. The first is jealousy, and the second is very deep. It's called a cover-up. The murderer wanted to cover up something. What she wanted to cover up was that she couldn't let anyone know that the person who died wasn't Wu Daodao, but Song Tong Tong. Such a shocking deduction was made. The entire hall fell into a silence that had never been there before. Everyone's expression was different. All of them seemed to have been struck by something, and it took them a long time to come back to their senses. Only Aunt Zhong burst into tears all of a sudden. She was the only one who knew that Hellion Weiwei was telling the truth. In the past half a year, the change in Miss was so obvious. She still remembered that during the summer holidays, when she came back from school, she would always pester her to eat fried meatballs. But ever since that year, she found her dirty. Whenever she was unhappy, she would chisel her with something. Sometimes, she would even kick her fiercely and tell her to scram. Auntie Zhong couldn't bear to leave. She had watched Miss grow up. Sometimes, she would wonder why a child would become like this out of nowhere. Now she understood. That was not her Miss at all. When old Master Song saw Aunt Zhong's reaction, he instantly understood something. He sat back down heavily in his seat, and his eyes, which had never admitted defeat before, were stained with defeat. Why? My granddaughter has never done anything wrong to anyone. Why did she target Tong Tong? Because Miss Song has everything that she wants but can't reach. Her family background, appearance, and position in the hearts of her male classmates. Hellion Vivian glanced at Yuan Wu. In addition, she knows Miss Song very well. Miss Song lost her parents when she was young and has only one friend. Department head Song lives in the army all year round, and there is only one Auntie Zhong at home who serves her. With all these circumstances combined, she became Wu Taotao's target because after she became Miss Song, she didn't have to worry about being discovered at all. Perhaps Auntie Zhong would notice something, but Auntie Zhong definitely wouldn't expect that she is no longer herself. An old butler is no threat in Wu Taotao's eyes at all. As long as she cuts off her previous circle of friends, she can live in this world without any scruples as Song Tong Tong. She can buy the luxury goods she wants and live in the mansion she wants. No, this is too cruel. The girl's fingers trembled as she covered her lips. Just for these things, Dao Dao will kill her good friend. Hellion Vivian looked at the girl and sighed. Do you still remember that you said that she insulted and beat up her mother for an iPhone? Not long after that, her mother passed away in a car accident. Not only did Wu Daodao not feel sad at all, she even happily went abroad to squander money. This proves how selfish Wu Daodao is. In her eyes, even her biological mother is not a big deal, let alone the good friend you speak of. The girl was completely speechless. She didn't know what to say because all of Hellion Vivian's statements were so reasonable. It was hard for her not to believe it. In other words, I raised the enemy who killed my own granddaughter at home for half a year. Old Master Song gripped his dragon-headed walking stick tightly. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with hatred. Master Zhong was dumbfounded. He had never thought that such a thing could happen in this world. Plastic surgery? Face change? This girl named Wu Daodao was so ruthless that it made one's hair stand on end. Wait, something didn't seem right. Master Zhong widened his eyes and stuttered to Hellion Vivian. Just now, you said that the person who was dragged away wasn't Song Tongtong, but one of us. What do you mean? Literally. Hellion Vivian looked around and slowly said, Wu Daodao, who is alive as Miss Song, has changed her face again. Now, she is among us. A loud bang was heard. The university student named Xiao Qing stood up immediately. When the others heard this, their hearts couldn't help but tremble. Whenever they thought of Wu Daodao, who had killed someone, sitting on both sides of them, they felt a chill run down their backs. Since she changed her face, it must be a girl. Because if it was a boy, the difference in height would expose her. Hellion Vivian chuckled and said, all along, we thought that Miss Song, who is Wu Daodao, had been staying in the room and never came out. After all, she was a victim and was already afraid of ghosts to a certain extent. It was impossible for her to walk around casually. In fact, Auntie Zhong saw her go out. Chapter 1091. She left the room to complete her first murder plan. Hellion Vivian tapped her fingers on the table. Ever since Master Wufan entered this villa, he has been feeling uneasy. When Department Head Song mentioned the accident back then, he didn't even listen to what Celestial Master Zhong was discussing. I'm guessing that Master Wufan must have sensed something and had been in contact with Wu Daodao, who had transformed into Miss Song. After all, he had come to the Song family before, so it's not strange for the two of them to have a deal. Hellion Vivian looked up at Celestial Master Zhong. Everyone knows that the cell signal in the villa is very poor. Unless one is connected to the internet, there's no way to communicate. However, Master Wufan said that he was waiting for a call. From this, it can be seen that the call he was waiting for wasn't made to his cell phone, but to the landline in the room. Every room we live in has a landline, and every room can call and talk to each other. As long as she knows which room Master Wufan lives in, she can ask Master Wufan out and kill him. There were no wounds on Master Wufan's body. It was obvious that he suffocated to death, but from the beginning to the end, we didn't hear any sounds of struggle. It was indeed raining heavily, but Master Wufan was an adult man and had a certain level of skill. It would take some time to drown him. That way, it would be impossible for Adjutant Liang, who was stationed outside the villa, not to hear anything. However, Master Wufan died exceptionally quietly. There was no sound at all, which means that he died without being on guard. In other words, it was an acquaintance who committed the crime. She killed Master Wufan to silence him. The second time she acted so anxiously was because after she killed Master Wufan, she exposed the suspicion that the murderer was a human and not a ghost. I think that when we were discussing in the hall, Wu Daodao should have been listening in a corner. She hated me very much. She hated me to the extreme because it was very likely that her plan would be ruined by me. That's why after she killed Master Wufan, she immediately wanted to kill a second person. Because the second person was her real target. She has been preparing for this murder since more than 2 months ago. First, she mentioned the incident at the beach, and then she used that as an excuse to lock herself in the house. Actually, she didn't come out not because she was afraid of ghosts but because she had undergone plastic surgery to look like someone else, and it was inconvenient for her to be seen. Then, she started to act according to plan. She deliberately put on the clothes she wore when she was Wu Daodao and made the victim wear Miss Song's clothes. Firstly, it was to make everyone believe that it was a ghost who came to claim lives and not a murderer. Secondly, it was so that she could logically have a new identity and make the real person disappear along with the identity of Song Tongtong. At that time, everyone will fall into deeper horror because Wu Taotao's ghost took Song Tongtong away. No one will believe that she was killed. This way, she can continue to live with her new identity and never be discovered. Too scary. This kind of person is too scary. The girl hugged her arms, and even her voice was trembling. The person sitting next to him was the murderer. This kind of feeling made one's hair stand on end. However, Yuan Wu's first reaction was not fear, but anger. He turned his head and looked at Xiao Qing, who was sitting at the back. "It's you, right? Only you have been targeting Master Helion and calling her a liar. You brought all of us into the lies you made up. You pointed at the figure outside the window and said that she was back to claim lives. Isn't that you? What kind of joke is this?" Xiao Qing's face turned pale. "I just don't believe this celestial Master Helion." At that time, everyone clearly saw the shadow outside the window. "Don't you think that there was a ghost? Everything that this celestial Master Helion is saying is too unbelievable. Changing faces? And twice in a row. Is this really possible?" As she spoke, Xiao Qing turned to look at Old Master Song. "Uncle Song, do you think this is possible?" Old Master Song's eyes carried a strong military aura as he rebutted her words. "It's possible." Xiao Qing was stunned and said anxiously, "Uncle Song, don't be fooled by this person. If it's really a murder, then how do you explain the scene that Deputy Liang saw? What kind of person can be so fast and disappear in the blink of an eye? Unless it's a ghost. This problem is very easy to solve." Helion Vivian leaned back and sat lazily on the wooden chair with her legs slightly crossed. Xiao Qing paused. Her face was full of astonishment. "What did you say? Very easy to solve? But I can't be bothered to talk to you anymore." Helion Vivian smiled, her eyes cold. "So, from now on, you'd better shut up." Xiao Qing had always lived recklessly since she was young. She had never been treated like this before. Her entire face flushed red as she glared at Helion Vivian desperately. Helion Vivian did not look at her again. Instead, her gaze landed on someone. "If this student Qing was half as smart as you, I wouldn't have to work so hard. Don't you think so, student Wu Dao Dao?" In an instant, everyone followed her gaze. That was the witch, Li Ya. Li Ya met her gaze in confusion, looking like she did not know what was going on. "It's you. You don't have to look around." Helion Vivian reached out to support herself on the table and slowly stood up, looking down at her. Li Ya pointed at herself, her gentle voice trembling slightly. "You suspect me? Impossible." No one felt that there was anything wrong with Li Ya. "I say, you must be careful when identifying the murderer." Master Zhong looked at Helion Vivian and said, "If you identify the wrong person, the real Wu Dao Dao will be safe. This is the most dangerous." Helion Vivian opened her eyes and glanced at him. She smiled. "Master Zhong, from the beginning, you and that student Qing have been interfering with me. You are the best helpers for the murderer. I know you have some other thoughts about Miss Li Ya, but if you say any more nonsense, get lost immediately." "Miss Helion." Li Ya opened her mouth. "Master Zhong is also afraid that the real murderer will escape punishment, so I reminded you. Why do you have to speak so harshly? If you suspect that I'm the murderer, show me the evidence. It's ridiculous to change faces. We can't just follow your thoughts like this. Whoever you say is the murderer is the murderer. This is simply playing with our lives." Helion Vivian curled her thin lips and lowered her face a little, but her eyes were cold. "Wu Dao Dao, do you think that if you do it secretly, others won't see through your tricks?" Chapter 1092. My name is not Wu Dao Dao. Li Ya sighed helplessly. "Miss Helion, is it really okay for you to make such an arbitrary judgment and not listen to other people's advice? Aren't you afraid of causing disgust?" Helion Vivian smiled and retracted her arm. Li Ya thought that she finally knew how to consider other people's feelings. Unexpectedly, Helion Vivian said, "The people in this villa have nothing to do with me. It doesn't matter if they dislike me or even hate me. I'm here to earn money, not to do charity. You want me to consider everyone's feelings? Excuse-me. Do I look like a little Virgin Mary?" Li Ya felt like she was choking at that moment. Helion Vivian didn't change the faint smile on her face. "Okay, let's talk about why I suspect you. There are a lot of photos of Miss Li Ya in your room, and you even kept her information in detail. It's obvious that she has been your target for a long time, including this time when you called all of us yin-yang masters here. In fact, your real target is only Miss Lee Ya. You want to become her, so you keep studying her so that you can imitate her in the future. Soon, you found out many of her little secrets, including that she doesn't know any witchcraft and is just a live-streamed lie on the computer. Also, she is very afraid of the dark, so you have been hiding outside. When you heard that she was going to the toilet, you found an opportunity to cut the wires. At this time, Lee Ya is very easy to deal with, anyone can knock her out. Miss Hellion. Lee Ya took a deep breath. I really don't know what to say. I have so many fans on the internet, and countless people buy photos. You think that I'm the murderer just based on your imagination and these photos? Do you think this kind of excuse can be accepted? If you can't find any evidence to slander me like this, I can only wait until dawn and let my private lawyer have a good talk with you. Hellion Vivian turned the teacup in her hand. Let's talk now. Time is money. My fee is very expensive. Speaking of this, she casually glanced at little Ching. Student Ching, haven't you always been doubting my speculation? Now, he could listen carefully to why a person could disappear in the blink of an eye. It was a very simple trick. When Deputy Liang chased after the murderer, he happened to see the murderer turn a corner. He thought that the murderer went in that direction. In fact, the murderer could have used the gap in the wall to jump into the bathroom at the corner. This way, when Deputy Liang ran over, there would definitely be no one there. Xiao Qing, who was named, had a very bad expression. She had never thought that there would be such a method. She only felt that she was being slapped in the face. Hellion Vivian took a sip of tea. At that time, you were still doubting me. Celestial Master Zhong was also denouncing you in order to get the final commission. Your reactions were all within the murderer's expectations. Because if the ghost appeared, my argument would immediately be attacked. Wu Daodao knew you very well. After all, you were classmates. She knew very well what kind of personality you had. You were born rich, so you definitely wouldn't be satisfied with my accusation. Using this point, Wu Daodao bought a lot of time, such as cross-dressing. At this point, Hellion Vivian paused and looked at Leah. When we went to knock on the door, you should have been changing your clothes. You changed the clothes we saw before into Miss Leah's clothes. That's why we heard the sound of clothes rustling in the bathroom. In the end, these are just your speculations. Leah said without changing her expression. There's no real evidence. Hellion Vivian frowned. Evidence? It's indeed a headache to find. That's why you're so fearless, isn't it? Leah curled her lower lip slightly and didn't say anything. Hellion Vivian smiled. However, I still found it. What? Leah was shocked. Hellion Vivian looked to the side. Deputy Liang, can I trouble you to check the vent of the bathroom? There might be a person hiding there. Hearing this, Leah's expression completely changed. Her hand moved, but her eyes slowly darkened. Soon, Deputy Liang's excited voice came from the other side. It's a person. There's really a person here. This is Miss Leah. Bang! A gunshot sounded. Jing Xiaofeng quickly blocked in front of Hellion Vivian. The knife in his hand cut the bullet in half. Leah, no, it should be Wu Daodao, held a pistol and pointed the muzzle at Hellion Vivian. She smiled. What an eyesore. Such a perfect plan was ruined by you. Perfect. Hellion Vivian laughed softly. Do you deserve this word? In order to get a phone, you beat and scolded your mother. From the beginning to the end, you were filthy. I really can't find any salvation. Wu Daodao sneered. Having a mother like that will only embarrass me. I can be poor without money or power. The Song family is not bad. If that monk hadn't noticed something, I wouldn't have had to change my identity. However, I also like this identity very much. A genius which can easily be loved by thousands of people. I could have gotten it quietly, but I had to come and mess things up. I'm really courting death. Why? Daodao, why did you do this? Little Ching clenched her hands and roared. Wu Daodao glanced at her. What do you mean why? Do you think I don't know? How did you mock me behind my back? You said that the phones I use are all domestic, that my clothes are worthless, and that my mother looks like a village girl. Speaking of which, if you hadn't kept saying that, I wouldn't have thought of changing identities with Song Tong Tong. After all, compared to you, I hate her more. Why is it that she was born with nothing, but I have nothing? She roared the last sentence. Her face after plastic surgery was distorted to a certain extent. Under the flickering candlelight, she looked even scarier than a real evil ghost. All right, it's time for the game to end. Wu Daodao laughed again, her voice a little gloomy. Originally, I didn't intend to kill too many people, but if I don't silence all of you now, I'll be very distressed. As she spoke, she met Hellion Vivian's gaze. Don't worry. After all of you are dead, I'll call the police and tell them that this place is haunted. I'll ask them for help. Haha, just like back then at the seaside, no one will suspect the victims. At that time, I can still get away with it. Chapter 1093. Wu Daodao. Yuan Wu couldn't hold it in anymore. He clenched his fists and stood up. Wu Daodao glanced at him. Oh, it's our university hunk Yuan. How good would it have been if you had accepted my confession back then? I wouldn't have killed Song Tong Tong out of jealousy. You must be very sad that the girl you love the most is dead, right? However, ever since I came to the Song family, I've seen many men with better conditions than you. I've long lost my feelings for you. Adjutant Liang. Old Master Song's voice was extremely deep. Every inch of him was brewing with unprecedented anger. Arrest this person for me. Wu Daodao lowered her head as if she had heard a funny joke. She chuckled. Arrest me? We have more people than you. Why can't we arrest you? Hellion Vivian asked slowly. Wu Daodao looked up and met her eyes. To be honest, you're indeed very smart. You have a pretty face. If I were alone, I wouldn't be able to deal with you. However, hey, ha ha ha, Zhao, how long are you going to stay there? Zhao. No one knew who Wu Daodao was talking to. However, from the way she looked, it seemed like there really was someone else here besides them. No. It shouldn't be said that it was someone. Because there was clearly nothing else in the hall other than them. Then what could it be? What exactly was the Zhao that Wu Daodao was talking about? Zhong Tianxia suddenly felt a chill on his neck, as if something was standing behind him. Drip, drip. Raindrops were falling. What was going on? Why was it leaking? Everyone looked up at the ceiling. The dead Wu Fan was looking at them with his eyes wide open. And the raindrops they thought were actually the blood left on his body. Ghost, ghost. Master Zhong was so scared that he fell to the ground. Xiao Qing's face was drained of all color, probably because he was a corpse. Wu Fan's movements when he raised his hand were stiff. However, it was precisely because of that stiffness that everyone froze in place in fear. They could use Hellion Vivian's reasoning to explain many things. But how could they explain the scene in front of them? Ghost, it was a real ghost. Jing Zifeng was the first to move. He drew his sword and swung it. Then, they heard Wu Fan let out a ferocious cry of a malicious ghost. He grabbed Celestial Master Zhong, who was the closest to him. In order to avoid the trouble of being possessed by ghosts, Jing Zifeng counterattacked and directly cut off Wu Fan's arm. Wu Fan opened his mouth. It was a black hole. He seemed to be afraid of the sword in the young man's hand. He turned around and flew out of the villa. Of course, Jing Zifeng would not let him escape. He immediately chased after him with his sword. Only then did Zhong Tianxia heave a heavy sigh of relief. However, just when everyone thought that everything was fine, Wu Daodao curled her lips into a smile. Ayaya, you're really smart. You actually thought of using such a method to lure that Onmyoji away. That you was still there. Not only Celestial Master Zhong, but even Old Master Song's heart trembled. Cold sweat flowed down his back uncontrollably. Drip, drip. The disturbing sound of water rang out again. The flickering candlelight on the table had somehow turned into an eerie shade of blood. It was said that the candlelight would only appear when someone had died in the family. The entire villa was so empty and eerie that it was frightening. Xiao Qing hugged her head in fear. A cloud of black fog appeared behind Wu Daodao, and a man appeared from the black fog. The man's face was very ugly, and his fingernails were black and long. There was even fresh blood on them. The amount of food this time is really surprising. Wu Tongtong looked at Xiao Qing's trembling face with satisfaction. None of you should have thought of this, right? I'm not afraid of anyone investigating at all, and I'm not afraid of those on my OG. Because no matter how many people come, they will all become Yu's food. When the man heard this, he licked his lower lip. His blood-red eyes turned and finally fixed on Hellion Vivian. What a fragrant smell. If this soul is crushed, the taste should be very good. Then what are you waiting for? Wu Tongtong said coldly, kill her. She thought that when she said this, she would see Hellion Vivian show the same expression as Xiao Qing. After all, this woman was so smart that it made her a little unhappy. However, what Wu Tongtong didn't expect was, the other party actually smiled. Her voice was low and pleasing to the ears. Him. Kill me. Wu Tongtong was also smiling, and her tone was full of pride. I know you know magic, but who do you think you is? Even if you have some ability in Yin-Yang Dao, you can still cut your soul. Oh! Hellion Vivian raised her right hand, and the direction of the wind suddenly changed. Then let's try and see who can cut who. It smells so good, it really smells so good. When you smelled Hellion Vivian's aura, his eyes had already fallen into madness. Now, he directly stretched out his black fingernails and grabbed in the direction of Hellion Vivian. However, before he could get close to Hellion Vivian, a figure faster than him blocked in front of him. You looked at his arm that was grabbed and didn't have time to speak. There was a bang. His entire body was kicked to the ground heavily. A tearing pain came from his hand. You immediately raised his head to look at the man who attacked him. Beligaju stood there, his tall and slender figure wrapped in a military uniform. Black feathers fell slowly, making him look like a warlord noble. It was very unreal, but his entire body was integrated into one with the darkness. I don't like people looking at my soul with that kind of gaze. You are. Yu's eyes slowly widened, fear filled all his cells, and the name on the tip of his tongue was about to come out. However, Beligaju would never give anyone who wanted to touch his pet any chance. There was a crisp crack. His hand was forcibly broken by him. Wu Taotao's expression changed. What was going on? It shouldn't be like this. How could there be someone in the world who could hurt you? Wu Daodao seemed to have thought of something. She took out a piece of paper and kept drawing with the blood on her hand. However, it still didn't work. How could this be? Wu Daodao pulled the paper crazily. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and looked at Hellion Vivian. Who are you? We. Hellion Vivian chuckled. The yin-yang masters you invited. Wu Taotao's eyes were red. It can't be that simple. No one can do this to you. Why not? Hellion Vivian asked lazily. Wu Daodao, you're not the only one who can sign a contract. Chapter 1094. Wu Daodao was shocked. You also sold your soul to the Grim Reaper? Grim Reaper? Hellion Vivian tapped her fingers on the table and said evilly, Our Highness doesn't like to be called that. Wu Daodao was about to break down. She looked at Hellion Vivian's smiling face. It felt as if the other party had already known what she was capable of and was waiting for her to walk right into the trap. She never thought that the person she casually chose on the internet, the person she thought was the best to deal with, would be like this. Who is it? Who are you? Wu Daodao roared, trembling with anger. She hated people who were smarter and better looking than her the most. She turned to Kai and said, Kai, don't fight with him. Come and kill this woman first. In the past, every time she called for Kai, he would rush over quickly. It was the same this time. After all, she couldn't die no matter what. Indeed, the Grim Reaper stood up and moved his fingers to restore his arm to its original position. Then, he flew toward Wu Daodao. Yes, just like that, kill her. Just as Wu Taotao's eyes lit up with surprise, Kai pierced her chest with his fingernails. Kai! Wu Daodao looked at the person in front of her in shock. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Why? Kai was like an evil spirit. He cracked his lips and smiled. Because I don't need you anymore. Dirty humans are really boring. At first, I thought you were quite smart, and your killing methods were very beautiful. I didn't expect you to be so stupid this time and attract someone you shouldn't have. As he said that, he exerted force and Wu Taotao's heart was completely shattered. While enjoying the pleasure of cutting her soul, Kai planned to escape. He didn't want to fight head-on with the other party. Celestial Master Zhong became his best target. After passing through this body, he could hide the aura on his body again. Master Zhong saw Kai rushing toward him like an evil spirit. His eyes were filled with tears as he shouted, "Help!" Kai was worried that Beligaju would notice his intentions, but he didn't expect that the man didn't even move. The legendary Demon King was nothing more than this. However, when he passed through Celestial Master Zhong's body, he realized that he was completely wrong. The other party had already seen through his ploy. Otherwise, the man wouldn't have been waiting for him in advance. I heard that after being possessed by the Grim Reaper, even if you don't die, you will go crazy. Beligaju reached out and grabbed his collar. His action was not rude, but had an indescribable elegance. His handsome side profile was still so perfect that it made people's hearts flutter. He lowered his voice and said in Yu's ear, "Thank you very much. She doesn't like to see me kill people, but I hate those who deserve to die. Of course, besides this Master Zhong, what I dislike the most is that someone dares to peep at my prey." It was him. He didn't move just now because he wanted to use him to punish Celestial Master Zhong. Yu finally understood. But it was too late. Only now did he realize that Beligaju had not displayed his full strength at all. The moment the black feather fell, an extremely painful burning sensation spread from his fingers to his entire body. It felt like he couldn't shake it off no matter how hard he tried. When Yu lowered his head again, his lower body had already turned into a pool of black water, followed by his upper body. Wherever the black feather floated, it was as if it had been burned by fire. In the end, it was completely melted. In contrast, Beligaju smiled gently. He let go of his hand and wiped his fingers with a tissue before walking towards Hellion Vivian. He looked quite distressed. "I seem to have been a little merciful. I wanted to let him kneel and cry for a while." Hellion Vivian was speechless. "Don't mind these details." What else could she say? Shouldn't the one crying be the Grim Reaper who had turned into black water? Beligaju smiled and held Hellion Vivian's hand. He put it to his lips and kissed it. "My master, you are so considerate." Of course, Hellion Vivian was very happy to be praised, so she didn't ask why he didn't get rid of the Grim Reaper at the beginning and even let him pass through a person. Beligaju looked at her smug little face and curled his lips without batting an eyelid. Look, how cute his pet was. Xiao Qing, who was at the side, widened her eyes. The truth was right in front of her. Everything was as Hellion Vivian had said. From the beginning to the end, the murderer was among them. But why? In the end, it's that evil spirit who controlled Dao Dao. At this point, Xiao Qing was still stubborn. If it wasn't for this evil spirit, Dao Dao wouldn't have killed people. Hellion Vivian took off the prayer beads in her hand and placed them in the pool of black water. She sneered. From the beginning to the end, it was Wu Daodao who killed whoever she wanted. It was just that after she signed a contract with the Grim Reaper would help her destroy those souls. A serial killer isn't formed overnight. It can be seen from the way she treated her mother. If Wu Daodao gave her any incentive, she would go astray. What does this have to do with the Grim Reaper? A vicious heart is a vicious heart. That's right. A devilish figure walked in from outside the villa. He had long hair, a handsome face, and a huge scythe on his shoulder. Who else could it be but Casso? I hate these humans the most. After they kill people, they push the blame to us, the Grim Reaper. They collect souls every day and don't even give us a raise. Do they really think we're willing? As he spoke, Casso smiled at Xiao Qing. A person like you also has the potential to be a pervert. Come, let me see what's inside you. Jealousy, vanity, and wanting to curry favor with the Song family, that's why you've always been friends with Song Tongtong. In fact, You don't really like her because you know that the Song family only has one granddaughter. As long as you mention Song Tong Tong from time to time and make old Master Song sad, you'll always gain some benefits. After all, old people miss their family. Hehe, this kind of method of poking at people's wounds is really shameless. You. Xiao Qing glanced at department head Song and said to Casso, don't talk nonsense. Nonsense. Casso raised his eyebrows. I think you're angry because I guessed right. Heh, what a dirty little human. Xiao Qing's face flushed red. Looking at the gazes that were directed at her from all around, she felt a burning sensation on her face. All her friends were looking at her. Those abnormal gazes. It simply made her feel ashamed. But none of this was important. The most important thing was department head Song. Uncle Song, you have to believe me. I mentioned Tong Tong because I miss her. Chapter 1095. Little Qing tried her best to defend herself. Old Master Song held his dragon-headed walking stick in his hand and didn't say anything. Casso laughed softly. Your first reaction is to look for Old Master Song. It seems that money is still more important than friends in your heart. As he spoke, he looked at Hellion Vivian. Do you want me to help you cut off this girl's soul? I have a feeling that she won't be a good person in the future. No need. Let this kind of person fend for herself. Hellion Vivian raised her chin in the direction of the dead Wu Daodao. The one you want is over there. Thanks. Casso walked to Wu Taotao's side and poked her face with his finger. Ah, it's all black. I really don't understand why someone likes to eat this kind of food. Phoenix, it's fortunate that I met you. Otherwise, if this woman continued to turn black, she would definitely become a perverted murderer. Hellion Vivian was very indifferent. It's just business. When the time comes, department head Song will pay me. Master Hellion, don't worry. Not only did you save everyone's lives today, but you also exposed the truth of what happened back then and what the people around me were like in front of me. I will definitely give you a lot of money. Old Master Song stood up and swept his sharp gaze over Little Qing, who was sitting on the ground. He didn't say anything else, but Little Qing knew that she could forget about basking in the glory of the Song family in the future. Ka Suo was not interested in the matter of these humans slapping their faces. After cutting off the soul that he wanted to collect, he went over to Hellion Vivian. Beligaju elegantly blocked in front of him and smiled evilly. I heard that the Grim Reaper hates being cut by his own scythe the most. Do you want to test it? Ka Suo immediately took a big step back. Holy shit. Do you have to be so possessive? Forget it, he originally wanted to tell Phoenix a piece of good news. Since the great demon was so protective of his food, he decided to tell this news to the two little demons first. The rain outside finally stopped. Just as Jing Zifeng dispersed the resentment on Wu Fan's body, military Hummers came around the mountain. The roads were cleared, and the power lines were connected. The entire villa was brightly lit. Hellion Vivian stood in front of Old Master Song. The other party seemed to have aged more than 10 years in an instant. I should have spent more time with Tong Tong. It's because I didn't care enough about her that things ended up like this. The people who got close to her and hurt her were all because of her surname. Hellion Vivian closed the box full of commissions. When the Grim Reaper dies, the souls he harvests will be reincarnated as humans. Hearing this, Elder Song's eyes lit up. He wanted to say something to express his gratitude, but when he turned around, there was no one behind him. Jing Zifeng stood outside the villa, holding a steamed bun in his hand. He gnawed on it bit by bit as he stared at Beligaju, who walked out. Then, he looked at Hellion Vivian and said, I'm going back to the mountain. Heh. Hellion Vivian looked at the sword-like youth and smiled. I thought you were going to fight with His Highness. Jing Zifeng was a man of few words. With you around, he won't kill anyone, so there's no need to fight. Hellion Vivian paused when she heard this. Even her eyes were gentle. She looked at the back of the youth with a sword on his back. She turned her head and said to Beligaju, he's really cute, isn't he? Cute. Beligaju raised his eyebrows and immediately shrunk his body. His two silvery white ears moved, and the smile on his face could almost melt the sun. Hellion Vivian couldn't resist His Highness in this form. She reached out and hugged him, rubbing her face against him. Big cute thing, let's go home. He was still so jealous and didn't mean what he said. Beligaju liked nothing more than Hellion Vivian throwing herself into his arms. He reached out and wrapped his arms around her waist. When his thin lips kissed her, he turned into an adult. The lush leaves swayed back and forth. The only thing Hellion Vivian could feel was the warmth of his thin lips and the unique smell of his body. It smelled good and was very comfortable. Her heart was pounding. His mind was also blank. After the kiss, he lowered his eyes and looked at her. That kind of gaze could easily make one's body go soft. So, she couldn't win against His Highness's handsome trick. 3,000 feet below, the flowers of the other side bloomed in full swing. A loud bang was heard. Bailey Shangxie, who was wearing a black leather jacket, kicked a monster into the ground. His small face was very cool. The other monsters who were still wandering around the boundary felt their faces hurt. Immediately, those who should escape ran away. After all, if they were caught by the little devil, they would all be finished. Qing Chen watched from the side. When her brother stopped, she immediately held a cup and ran over. She even wiped Bailey Shangxie's sweat, as if he had done a great thing. He was just beating up a monster. The one who was beaten up was about to faint from crying. Bailey Shangxie didn't drink the water. Instead, he took the cup and fed his brother. Are you hungry? If you're hungry, let those monsters cook. The monsters, damn it, they were all children who grew up eating raw meat. They didn't know how to cook at all. If they don't cook, we'll roast them and eat them. Bailey Shangxie was as cool as ever. His principle was to not make any noise when he could make a move, and not leave any alive when he could destroy them. The monsters, don't force them. They will commit suicide. When Casso arrived at the boundary of the barren land, he saw this scene. The formation of the barren land was often related to the human heart. As long as the human heart was dark to a certain extent, some demons would be able to escape through the cracks. Because the barren land didn't belong to the jurisdiction of any world. In this world, there weren't only black and white. There were also gray areas. And the barren land was the result of these gray areas. Once upon a time, the first chaos. Speaking of which, the great devil was born here. But the chaos of the past was different from the present. The monsters of today seemed to be about to be driven crazy by Bailey Shangxie. Hey, two little devils. Casso reached out and greeted them. Qing Chen had always been polite. Do you want to eat together? Brother said he wants to roast monster meat. The monsters. Casso looked at the dumbfounded monsters and laughed. There's no need to eat meat, but are you really not going back to the human world? I don't have any jobs recently. Bailey Shangxie didn't care. In the past, he didn't like to come here, but now that he had his brother to play with, there was nothing bad about it. Casso's lips curled up. That's a pity. I have very good news that I want to tell you. Good news? Bailey Shangxie raised his eyebrows. My mother has finally decided to divorce my father. Casso, how much do you want your family to be in discord? Tell me. No, it's just. Ka Suo paused for a moment and smiled evilly. There's a new member in your family. Chapter 1096. There's a new member in the family. This sentence successfully brought the pair of little people back to the human world. Beligaju looked at the two little ones who were an eyesore and threw them into the bathtub, one in each hand. Bailey Shangxie wiped his little face and then began to wash his younger brother's hair. Upstairs, Hellion Wei Wei had also woken up. The last one was successful. She, who had returned to her original height, whistled at herself in the mirror. When she lowered her eyes, there was deep gentleness in them. Body, you have to be happy too. On the 9-story tower. At the foot of Mountain Tenya. The chanting of Sanskrit was heavy. The phoenix has truly returned. Body can avoid wandering for the rest of his life. In the vast expanse, a man in white stood tall. His eyes were filled with shock. The little one did not understand and tugged at his long sleeve. Master? Are you going back to Buddhism? No. The man squatted down and smiled at the little one. Snowflakes flew everywhere. In an instant, he was like a piece of jade. In the villa, Helene Vivian heard that her 2 sons had returned. She went downstairs happily and took out the beef and vegetables from the fridge, as well as the chocolate ice cream that she had bought earlier. The 2 little ones cleaned themselves up quite quickly. After they came out smelling good, they saw a table full of delicious food. However, what caught their attention was not the chocolate that they were most interested in. It was Helene Vivian's belly. It should be right. Qing Chen tilted her little head and whispered to her brother, "There's one more member in the family. It means that mother is pregnant." Bailey Shangxie also nodded, "It's flat. I can't see anything. It's not time yet." Qing Chen felt itchy in her ears and kept scratching herself with her little claws. Bailey Shangxie knew that it was a mosquito bite. He took the little one aside and rubbed the toilet water with his fingers. "Don't scratch yourself next time." "What if you scratch yourself?" Qing Chen finally felt comfortable, but her eyes still didn't move away from Helene Vivian's belly. Bailey Shangxie looked back and found that his great demon father was not there. He turned to Helene Vivian and said, "Mother, we have something to tell you." Helene Vivian had already seen the 2 little tails following her around, one in each hand. "What's the matter?" Qing Chen leaned over and whispered something in her ear. Helene Vivian was also stunned. Indeed, her period had not come recently. Moreover, he would hug her to sleep every night. Even when he woke up in the morning, he would toss and turn for a while. Thinking of this, Helene Wei also lowered her head and her eyes fell on her stomach. There was probably no need to check it out. There was a high possibility that it was there. Helene Vivian smiled and reached out to hug her 2 sons. "Don't tell your father about this first." Bailey Shangxie also planned to do so. His father definitely didn't like children. "Maybe it's a little sister," Qing Chen said reasonably. She touched Helene Vivian's belly with her little hand. "Brother and I are both boys. It should be a little sister when we give birth." Qing Chen was a little sad when she said this. If it's a little sister, what if she gets bullied in the future? Bailey Shangxie held his little body, afraid that he would fall. His little face was very serious. "I will protect you and your little sister." "Okay." Helene Vivian wanted to laugh. These 2 little guys, they hadn't been born yet. How did they know that it was a little sister? Beligaju left the living room and went to the study because of a call from the top manager. "President, I heard that little CEO is back. There are many film companies here that want to work with little CEO." Without waiting for the top manager to finish, Beligaju slowly said, "Which film company is far from here?" "Ah." The top manager was a little confused. "There's one in Shanghai. The rest are all in Beijing. The resources here are good. Pick up the one in Shanghai." Beligaju hung up the phone indifferently. Usually, shouldn't he consider the problem of resources? Although the top manager didn't understand what the boss was thinking, her ability to execute was top-notch. She got the contract done in minutes. The company in Shanghai suddenly felt like they had been hit by a pie. "Well, to be honest, we didn't have much hope. After all, there are so many resources in Beijing and CEO Ju's company is there. Shuji, can you tell us why CEO Ju chose us? It feels a little surreal. Because you are far away." How could the top manager say such a hurtful truth? She looked up at the ceiling and blurted out a very encouraging sentence. "CEO Ju never looks at resources. He only looks at ability." The producer in Shanghai was immediately moved. "Don't worry, we definitely won't let CEO Ju down." The top manager, it wasn't the first time that His Highness had exiled an eyesore. After settling the matter, he walked out of the study. The 3 of them had finished chatting and were very consistent in their attitude of confidentiality. The atmosphere at dinner was very pleasant. After dinner, Beligaju leaned in a corner of the kitchen and watched his son wash the dishes with his arms crossed. This was the first time the little devil was doing such a thing. His small body moved here and there, his little face very cool. Qing Chen wanted to help, so Bailey Shangxie handed her a bowl after washing it. The 2 brothers were having a lot of fun. Helene Wei looked at the father and son trio from the side. She raised her phone and took a photo. Catcher. After Bailey Georgiou heard the voice, he looked toward her and the corners of his mouth slowly curved up. Hellion Vivian felt that His Highness was using his beauty on her again. She had to resist the temptation, but the man still didn't let her go. Under the dim lights of the city, the temperature in the bedroom kept rising. He was very strong. He pressed down on her wrists and his breath kept surging up. Hellion Wei's mind was a piece of paste. The scalding heat that made people numb followed along her neck and kissed downwards, until his slightly cool lips held hers. Hellion Vivian came back to her senses and turned her face away. Not today. Upon hearing that, Bailey Georgiou's eyes darkened. No. Yes. Hellion Vivian wanted to push him away. But he pressed her back and said in a low voice, "Then sleep. Sleep like this." Their posture was very intimate. Hellion Vivian could feel the heat against her. But His Highness had always been very gentle when he hugged her, especially when she felt the kiss before she fell asleep. It was very light and a little cold. Hellion Vivian fell asleep. Belagajou looked at her face and his slender fingers moved back and forth. In the end, he unbuttoned one of her buttons. With a click, a photo was saved on his phone. Of course, he still liked her the most when she was in love. So, no. Ha. Chapter 1097. When Belagajou's finger swiped across the photo album, his black thumb ring flashed with a deep light. Then, he put the phone aside and slowly lowered his body. Hellion Vivian was halfway through her sleep when she felt as if her body was on fire. A numb feeling came from her tailbone, and the chill of her half-open clothes made her open her eyes involuntarily. However, it was already too late. He seemed to have calculated the time. When he saw her open her eyes, he entered her just like that. He was gentle and forceful, making her feel an indescribable joy. She was half asleep and half awake, and was hugged by him just like that. Hellion Vivian could only bite her thin lips and grab the bedsheets under her. However, he seemed to like seeing her like this. He took her hand and placed it behind his neck. His hot lips held hers as he chuckled softly. "Are you comfortable? My naive master, you seem to have forgotten again. As long as you don't give me an order, you can't order me around." Following that was a heavy force. Every time, Hellion Vivian had nowhere to run. When she woke up again, the sky was already bright. What greeted her was the man's gentle kiss. Hellion Vivian felt that if she continued to be taken care of by a certain highness like this, she would definitely gain a lot of weight. Hence, Hellion Vivian decided that she had to send a certain highness to the company. Speaking of which, as a CEO, was it really good for him not to go to work for so many days? On this day, all the higher-ups of Zhu Wei Group felt the coldness emanating from their boss, who hadn't held a meeting for a long time. No one in the meeting room dared to speak. They just kept drinking water with their heads lowered, feeling extremely tormented. Say. Finally, their boss spoke. Every higher-up raised their heads. Forget it. After these two words, there was a stifling silence. Everyone burst into tears. "Boss, if you have something to say, please say it. This is very scary, okay?" The higher-ups looked at each other and began to lower their heads to drink water. Special Assistant Long raised his hand to look at the time. From 8:30 in the morning to 11:30, a full 3 hours had passed. Did Master quarrel with Princess Consort again? They didn't quarrel, but Belagajou was puzzled. She clearly liked his touch, so why had she been avoiding him since yesterday? Bailey Georgiou even let him handle these boring tasks. Bailey Georgiou crossed his legs and picked up the proposal book on the desk. He saw the loopholes in it with just a glance. He threw the proposal book back indifferently and said, "Redo it." Yes. The higher-ups wanted to cry again. What was wrong with their boss today? What was wrong with him? They had originally wanted to ask Special Assistant Long. However, it was clear that the boss had no intention of ending this morning meeting. On the other side, Hellion Vivian, who found out that she was pregnant, told the rough men about her situation. "I really didn't expect the child to come so soon." A few rough men squatted in front of Hellion Vivian and asked, "Boss, what are you going to do?" Of course I have to give birth to it. Helene Vivian took a sip of water and touched her chin. But I read a novel yesterday. And then? The few burly men blinked their eyes. I haven't registered my marriage with His Highness yet. Helene Vivian said seriously, as a domineering CEO, how can I let my other half be an unmarried father? K's handsome side profile was about to be deformed. The real domineering CEO was CEO Ju, right? Boss, how can a woman be considered a domineering CEO? However, there were still some people who supported her. Other than K, the other rough men's attitudes were as follows. Boss, you should have married your man long ago. It's not safe to leave him outside. That's right. I heard that there are a lot of young girls in companies like theirs. Take CEO Ju to South Africa and eliminate the temptation. Jin, how many times have I told you that we are in a serious business now? We can't do what bandits do, and we can't kidnap men to be boss's men, but boss, you can buy CEO Ju with money. All the domineering CEOs in novels do this. I read one yesterday too. K. You bunch of bulls. He was already speechless at his brothers and rubbed his temples with a headache. K also agreed. Let's do it, boss. Young L touched the glass bottle beside him with his gun. K, fuck, I was having a headache, not agreeing. Sure enough, it was right to come to discuss with our brothers. Helene Vivian smiled and picked up the car key. Then I'll go to the company to find him now. Speaking of which, the Civil Affairs Bureau gets off work quite early. If I'm late, I won't be able to get in. Kay leaned back, obviously giving up. Boss, as long as you're happy. Helene Vivian was certainly in a good mood. Whistling, she put on her sunglasses and grabbed the handlebar with her right hand. The beautiful BMW Tomahawk rushed into the endless traffic. Helene Vivian was dressed very handsomely today. It was a proposal, so of course she had to look good. She had soft, waist-length chestnut-colored curly hair, black diamond earrings, and cropped pants that were wrapped around her legs, revealing her fair and slender ankles. She propped herself up on the motorcycle with one leg and stopped at the main entrance of Ju Wei Group. Helene Vivian felt that it was too troublesome to go up and come down again, so she took out her phone and sent a WeChat message to His Highness. Are you busy? When the sound of the system notification rang, the executives in the conference room looked up in unison. I'm not in a hurry. Bailey Jiaju chuckled and sent the message. The others looked at the piles of information in front of them silently, their eyes shining as if they had seen some hope. Then come down. I'm at the entrance of your company. I'm here to pick you up. Helene Vivian sent a WeChat message with sunglasses in her mouth, completely unaware that she was being watched. Beligaju walked to the transparent observation window. Most of the building was made of glass, so it was easy to see outside. Stay there and don't move. I'll be down soon. Beligaju put his phone in his pocket and glanced at the small figure downstairs. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile that could make heaven and earth pale. The higher-ups could only watch as their boss left. After the door of the conference room closed, they couldn't help but rush to the window and ask curiously, what was CEO Ju looking at just now? Someone must have come. Didn't you hear CEO Ju ask the other party not to move? The executives guessed. Do you think it's Madam? It was very likely. No, it wasn't just likely, it was definitely her. Just now, the tone of the big boss voice was so doting, they had to find time to thank Madam properly for her appearance. Sob, 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 this torturous morning assembly is finally over. Chapter 1098. Helene Vivian didn't know how many people her appearance had saved. She was still tidying up her collar, thinking about what to say to move a certain highness later. She casually put on her sunglasses. She's really beautiful. Does she really have a child? Our little CEO is her son. What do you think? She's a good match for President Ju. Her bike is so cool, isn't it? Of course it's cool. One Tomahawk can buy several limited edition sports cars. It's said that the car's performance is especially good. It's been priced at a sky-high price. Many employees on the first floor found excuses to pass by the company's entrance just to take a look at the legendary CEO's wife. Helene Vivian had been to Ju Wei Group a total of 3 times. The first time she appeared, many people were infatuated with her. After all, there weren't many women who could look so handsome in a motorcycle uniform. The second time, she was still a little girl. No one recognized her at all. The third time was now. When Helene Vivian realized that someone was looking at her, she raised her head and smiled in that direction. The corners of her mouth were gentle, and her thin lips were beautiful. What should I do? Why do I feel like I'm being flirted with? I clearly like men, but the CEO's wife is so handsome. Unexpectedly, Helene Vivian was liked by many girls. After all, there were very few CEOs' wives like her. It wasn't that the rich young ladies weren't good. However, it seemed that there weren't many people like Helene Wei after some calculations. The girls were all shy. They wanted to get close but didn't dare, so they could only find excuses to pass by. Helene Vivian smiled and greeted them. Are you going for lunch? Yes. The 2 girls stopped in their tracks excitedly. Why aren't you going up, madam? Helene Vivian smiled and said, I'm waiting for him to get off work and pick him up for lunch. She couldn't say that she was going to get the marriage certificate. Madam picking up the CEO from work. She felt that there was something strange about this setting. Wasn't it usually the CEO who picked up Madam from work? The 2 girls looked at each other and said shyly, Madam, you have to come to the company often in the future. We are very supportive of you and the president. You and the president must grow old together. Give me more candy. They had drawn several comics based on Madam and CEO Ju, and they were especially popular. Thank you. Helene Vivian was stunned for a moment before she smiled behind the 2 girls. Ju. Boss. The 2 girls instantly stiffened and retreated to the side in fear and excitement. Although they were die-hard fans of the couple, they still felt very pressured when facing the president. Indeed, in this world, only Madam would not lose her luster when she stood next to the CEO. Bellegaju's voice was still indifferent. Give them a raise. Yes. Special Assistant Long, who had followed them, left with the 2 dazed girls. On the same day, a trending topic appeared on Weibo. The content of the joke was as follows: what is the standard of your salary increase? Working overtime to get the bill? He was so weak. We just need to bless the boss and his wife to grow old together. Then, it was drowned out by countless comments. Which company are you from? Is the technical department still hiring? The kind that knows how to bless people. Outside the company, Bellegaju was lowering his head to tidy up Helene Vivian's messy hair. He then wiped the tip of her nose with his finger. Isn't it hot here? A little. Helene Vivian reached out and hugged the man's waist. In order to pick you up from work, it's hot. The scene was so beautiful that it made the surrounding employees spit blood. They were too loving. Bellegaju lowered his head and kissed the top of her head. You're an idiot. Hey. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows and pinched his waist with her hand. Then, she smiled and said, hurry up and come up. I'll take you somewhere. Bellegaju glanced at her tomahawk and said, it's too hot today. I won't take the motorcycle. As a divine beast that had been by Bellegaju's side for more than 10,000 years, Special Assistant Long quickly understood what his master meant. A low-key business car drove over. Bellegaju held Helene Vivian's hand and said, get in. You're driving? Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows. Bailey Ju hummed in agreement. Helene Vivian seemed to have thought of something and retracted her long legs. By the way, did you bring your ID card? ID card? Human thing? Bellegaju wiped her sweat again and asked casually, what do you want that for? To get a certificate. Helene Vivian looked serious. I want to take you to get a certificate. You can't do it without an ID card. The surroundings were in an uproar. Every employee looked at each other. They had thought of the beginning of the story, but they hadn't thought of the end. They had thought that Madam was simply here to pick up the president after work, but it turned out that she was taking the president to get a certificate. A certificate? Wait a minute, so the president and Madam had always been unmarried? No, That wasn't the main point. The main point was, shouldn't the man take the woman to get a certificate? Certificate? Beligaju raised his eyebrows. Hellion Vivian explained, it's just a stamp on your body. From now on, our relationship will be legal. Beligaju naturally knew what it meant to get a certificate. The corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. He pulled her over and hugged her in his arms. Why did you think of getting a certificate? I want to let everyone know that you're mine. Hellion Vivian kissed him on the cheek and smiled faintly. She was generous and didn't hold back at all. Under the summer sun, the busy commercial street and the media who had received the first-hand news all watched this scene. Indescribable envy welled up in their hearts. Perhaps the outside world's evaluation was right. In 100 years, they had never met a man like Beligaju. Elegant, noble, and unapproachable. But he met Hellion Vivian. Such a bold, handsome, and unrestrained woman. She was like a gorgeous bouquet blooming in the dark. Not the pure white, but the red that was in full swing. Because only in this way could the darkness be illuminated. However, humans were always strange. While they were envious, they would also think that if a woman liked a man to this extent, if something happened in the future, it would be painful. They didn't know. The real one who couldn't leave the other party from the beginning was Beligaju. As early as when he woke up from the chaos and saw the little phoenix for the first time. He told himself that he had to get this person, no matter what method he had to use. Because whether it was a human or a demon. After tasting the taste of the sun, there was no way for him to let go. He wanted to drag her into the darkness and devour her completely, but he couldn't bear to do it again and again. No matter when, for thousands of years, he fell from god to demon, tore apart space and time, and gave up his divine sense. All he wanted was to hold her in his arms like now. Chapter 1099. At the Civil Affairs Bureau. A photo and 2 IDs. Hellion Vivian and Beligaju were like 2 ordinary couples, sitting there waiting to get a red book. There weren't many people at the Civil Affairs Bureau. Other people would probably pick a date to get their marriage certificate, such as 520 or something with a commemorative number. It was rare to see people like Hellion Vivian, who came to get their marriage certificate as they pleased. Therefore, His Highness was right when he said that she didn't have romantic cells. I finally got you. Hellion Vivian looked at the red book in her hand and was very proud. Beligaju raised his eyebrows. Got you. I've been chasing you. Don't you know? Hellion Vivian looked back at him. Beligaju pulled her over to avoid the sun. He really didn't know that little Phoenix was still chasing him. I must be too reserved. Hellion Vivian said with a smile, but it doesn't matter. You can't run away in the future anyway. This thing is legal in the human world. In the future, you have to wear a ring when you go out to work. If those women come close, you can tell them that you are mine. Okay. Bailey Jiaju leaned over and fastened the seat belt for her. Then, he kissed her smooth forehead. Hellion Vivian felt that His Highness was especially gentle and obedient today. Sure enough, the tutorials in the novels were right. As a domineering CEO, he had to give the other party a surprise from time to time. Since we have already gotten our marriage certificate, shouldn't we have an official wedding night? Beligaju put his fingers on the steering wheel and looked at her with his beautiful eyes. Hellion Vivian was caught off guard and was mesmerized by his beauty. Of course. It wasn't like they hadn't done a wedding night before. Reality proved that Hellion Vivian was still too inexperienced. When she was pressed down by Beligaju, she felt like she was being controlled by a huge and fierce machine. It entered the softest and most vulnerable part of his body, maintaining a high frequency and high intensity operation. Apart from panting uncontrollably, there was nothing he could do to turn the situation around. Wei. He nibbled her ear gently. Lift your legs. How could there be such a huge contrast? When he spoke, he was as gentle as a gentleman who loved her, but his body was doing such a beastly thing. However, she still compromised and obediently raised her leg. In less than 2 seconds, she started to push him away in regret. No, I really don't want it anymore. It's too deep. Don't say no. His voice was low and pleasing to the ear, and it was filled with panting that made one's whole body numb, but there was a kind of almost crazy calmness. When he heard her say no, he severely punished her a few more times. In the end, she was defeated. Her heartbeat was unbearable, and her cheeks were red. Finally, she opened her mouth slightly and carefully touched the tip of his tongue. She heard that his breathing was getting heavier, and his body temperature was getting higher and higher. Now, he only wanted to do one thing, which was to completely possess her and carve himself into her body, so that she would love him so much that there was no turning back, just like himself, completely falling. After that, he hugged her and sat her on his lap, and entered her from below. Her shoulders trembled, and she hugged his neck tiredly. She didn't even have the strength to support her body. Jew, let's stop here today. I really can't. I'm not enough. He lifted her chin and kissed her deeply as if coaxing her to listen to him, but his body mercilessly repeated and broke through. No matter how long they did it, no matter how many times they did it. It was not enough. Hellion Vivian woke up in the middle of the night. She was very worried that something would happen to her body. She reached out and touched her lower abdomen, and was relieved that the aura was very smooth. However, the soft light that shrouded her eyes was definitely not in the villa. Hellion Vivian moved her hands and found that she was lying on a luxurious bed piled with roses. He was already dressed, but he was not wearing the suit he used to wear. He was dressed in a demon's attire, with a cape that hung to the ground. His whole person was full of the aura of abstinence that she had felt when she first met him. Seeing that she was awake, he walked towards her and held her in his arms. His fingers played with her hair, and there was an imperceptible smile in his eyes as he looked at her. How many times have we done it? It's still so useless. Beast. Hellion Vivian buried her head, not wanting him to see her red face. Why did you bring me to the demon world? Beligaju reached out and took the clothes that were placed next to her, and helped her put them on one by one. The demon's food, of course, has to be in the demon world. Hellion Vivian looked at him for a while, then leaned over and kissed him. It seems that you are reluctant to eat me. Otherwise, why did you choose the time and place? Demons are very particular when they eat, especially when it comes to souls like you. Beligaju chuckled and picked her up, not forgetting to rub her waist with his fingers. Let me take you to a place. I'm hungry. Can I eat first? Usually, when Hellion Vivian made this request, a certain highness would agree. But this time, he directly carried her and walked out of the door. Hellion Vivian raised her eyebrows. This man was strange. The place Beligaju took her to was the demon world's first prison. 3,000 feet below, prosperity filled the air. This was the beginning of all evil. Countless demons clung to the surroundings, and the black stairs led to the endless abyss of hell. Beligaju's demon palace was at the top, like a crystal, the most pure existence. Your Highness, are you finally ready to eat this human woman? Are your eyes blind? That's obviously the Buddhist phoenix. Your Highness is indeed powerful. You can even trick Phoenix. They have a contract between them. Your Highness will definitely eat her. Shut up, Phoenix will hear you. If she runs away, His Highness' plan will be ruined. Hellion Vivian was speechless. Come on, you are so loud. I can already hear you, okay? Plan? What plan does this man have? Hunt her down? From the beginning to the end? Hellion Vivian's pupils constricted as she looked at the man in front of her. Beligaju leaned over and placed her on the unique throne. When his fingers brushed across her cheeks, it did look like he was sizing up food. Then, he opened his mouth and bit off the black gloves on his hands. Slowly, he approached her neck. Question. Other than his looks? Hellion Vivian thought about it and raised her eyebrows. Kissing just because you don't like it? Question. What the hell is kissing just because you don't like it? Chapter 1100. Suddenly, the light poured down. Many people said that there was no light that could be seen in the demon world. Unless someone was possessed by a demon that reached the heavens. It attracted the setting sun that was as red as blood. The light sprinkled on Belegaju's body and face. The fine edges made him look like he was wearing the stars and the moon, so bright that it was unreal. Then, he took a step back. His eyes and eyebrows were as cold as usual, as cold as snow. Then, in front of everyone, he knelt down on one knee and smiled faintly. "My master, I pray with the lifeline of the demon. From now on, I will only be your subordinate, the yellow earth and bones, guarding you without worries." Hellion Vivian widened her eyes. She looked at the man in front of her. His side profile reflected the faint light, and his whole person was as quiet as a painting. His long and narrow eyes were smiling faintly, gorgeous and enchanting, unlike his usual cold and sharp appearance. Back then, on Mountain Tenya, he didn't kneel to the gods and Buddhas, didn't kneel to Sakya, and didn't even kneel to the heavens. When she threw the buns at him, he looked at her coldly, not easy to get close to at all. When he wanted to eat her, he only told her one sentence when she was asleep: "Hellion Vivian, I will not be your prince." But now, she just got a marriage certificate with him. He gave the whole demon world to her hands, along with his life. If she was the ancient phoenix, the king of the Buddhist world, he would be her one and only subject. He spent a lot of effort to make her his queen from the beginning to the end. It turned out that the deepest love was never to turn a girl into a princess on the phone. It was to be like this, cutting through all obstacles and crowning you. Hellion Wei Wei could not hold it in anymore. She threw herself into Bailey Jioju's arms and said, "I should be the one to propose. Back in the human world, I'll let you propose again." Belegaju chuckled and hugged her. Then, he walked and sat back on the throne. No matter how many pairs of eyes were around, no matter how many gasps there were, Belegaju still placed her on his lap, forming a devil's seal under his slender fingers. That meant that all of them were only bound by one person. The human world was too long, and the times of the world were too long. However, human emotions were too weak. "You can't leave me, I can't leave you, we're bound to each other." This was what Belegaju had always wanted. He has a stupid master. No matter who had a contract demon like him, they wouldn't think of doing anything. Ever since she was in Phoenix, her brain had not been very nimble. She could have just given him an order, but she insisted on getting it bit by bit. He had always found that method annoying. However, he was firmly tied up by her and refused to budge. How long has it been since they signed the contract? Even if she had taken a fancy to him, she would not think of ways to make him serve her. Instead, she would kiss and hug him. In the end, she would say, "I've always been chasing you." It was simply impossible for him to do anything about it. He thought he would never see such a stupid person again. If there really was, it would not be his phoenix. When he was young, he wanted to monopolize the light that he saw for the first time. Now, she was finally in his arms. Black feathers fluttered down, rendering layer after layer of stairs in large clusters. The Buddha's light and the darkness intertwined. Thousands of gods and demons were churning endlessly. At the corner of the stairs, Bailey Shangxie and Hellion Qingchen each wore a small black suit, holding a bright red rose bouquet in their hands. On the bouquet were 2 black gemstones and diamond rings. Hand in hand, the 2 little ones walked up the stairs, looking like little flower boys who were popular with people. Hellion Vivian finally knew that all of this was arranged by someone. Lying in Belegaju's arms, she only felt that her heart was a little full. Perhaps Little Phoenix in Buddhism back then had always thought that there would be such a person who did not care how much blood was stained on her hands, who would see through her loneliness and treat her very, very well. She believed so. But she never thought that sometimes he was not good to her, he only thought about hunting for food. He approached her, not because he saw through her loneliness, but because he wanted to raise her. But, it was such a person. Ever since he held her hand, he had never let go. He wasn't wrong. He was never her prince. He was her invincible knight, splitting the chaos and stepping on the fire. He was as clear as the breeze, never leaving. At the side, Bailey Shangxie held the roses in his hands, looking as cool as ever. He had already checked on the internet. Some people had to say these words to the bride when they were getting married. He really did have a lot of things to say to his imperial mother. After thinking about it carefully, He raised his eyes and looked at Helian Wei with his small face. He earnestly said, "Imperial Mother, if you don't want to live with Imperial Father in the future, just tell me. I will take you and my younger brother to find a new man together." Yes, this was what he had always wanted to say to his mother. He was very satisfied with his blessing today. Beligaju glanced at the little brat who was protected by the woman he loved most, and resisted the urge to throw this troublemaker out. Compared to Bailey Shangxie, Helian Qingchen's blessing was more practical. The little one said in a serious tone, "I heard from Imperial Father that everything he owns in the future will be yours." That's good. After all, it's easy for a man to learn bad things when he has money. According to the books, if you want to know if a man loves you, you have to see how much he gives you. It's not the kind of thing where he buys you a bag or takes you out for a meal. Instead, he will put all his assets under your name. Beauty Vivian, to be honest, I have always been afraid that you will be confused by Father's beauty, worried that you will not be able to win against him. After all, he is so powerful, much more powerful than you. He can make a living with his face, but he relies on his talent. I especially admire him. Now I am not afraid anymore. His money is all with you, and he will not have the funds to find a mistress in the future. But there is still one thing to worry about, and that is Father's face. You know, with his appearance, it is difficult to not attract the love of rich women. Maybe there will be someone who wants to keep him. But you don't have to worry, I will work hard to earn money. When the time comes, except for you, no one will dare to keep Father. Helian Vivian once again felt that there must be something wrong with her little friend Qingchen's education. "Okay, Mother, you can exchange rings with Father and then start kissing." Helian Qingchen reached out her little hand and put the black gem in Helian Vivian's palm. Helian Vivian smiled and kissed the little one on the forehead. Helian Qingchen reminded her, "You will be a married person in the future, so don't kiss a little fresh meat like me. Now stand still and finish the wedding." Without the host, the MC, his brother, and his mother were all unreliable, so he could only rely on him to maintain the progress. Fortunately, he still had his father. Beligaju was the most cooperative. He took Helian Vivian's hand and pushed the black gem in little by little. Finally, he lowered his eyes and kissed her lips. Chapter 1101. Indeed, Helian Wei wanted to propose marriage again in the human world. After all, she was still an arms tycoon. However, when she heard that there were too many things to prepare for the wedding, and that she would vomit whatever she ate, she put this matter aside. Helian Vivian didn't know if it was an illusion, but as long as His Highness got close to her, she would vomit even more. In less than 3 times, Bailey Jiaoju sensed that something was wrong with her. He reached out and hugged her in his arms. There was a contract on the table about which company he was going to buy. "What's wrong with you these 2 days?" Beligaju took a cup and fed her water. It seemed that when it came to Helian Vivian, he would do everything himself. The butler was used to such a master, so he reached out and closed the door of the study. Helian Vivian lowered her eyes and drank the water in his hand. "It's nothing. It probably has something to do with the baby." Beligaju's fingers paused, and his eyes suddenly moved down and landed on her lower abdomen. There was a brief pause. "When did this happen?" "When I didn't let you touch me last time." Helian Vivian had no strength in her body. She wanted to lean on him and kiss him, but she didn't expect that the moment she touched his lips, the disgusting smell surged up again. She had no choice but to push him away and take deep breaths. Beligaju narrowed his eyes. "It rejects me." Indeed, His Highness's intuition was always so accurate. Helian Vivian took another sip of water to suppress the smell. "It was like this for the first 3 months. It will be fine after a while." Beligaju knew that she had to have this child. After all, she always liked children, especially his and hers. But he didn't want to see her suffer like this. As soon as he approached her, she would vomit. He went to ask the doctor, and they all said that 3 months was normal. This baby seemed to be very different from the 2 stinky brats. It seemed to be very obedient. Helian Vivian had just finished her checkup at the hospital. Before she could see Beligaju, she saw an old monk in a kasaya walking over from the other side. Amitabha. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows and smiled. I didn't expect to see an old friend here. It's fate. The old monk said kindly, the child in your womb is fated to be with Buddhism. She is born to repel evil. When she is born, it would be best for you to send her into Buddhism. This way, she will be safe. Helene Vivian thought for a moment and said, I don't think she's that weak. Yes, the young benefactor's vitality is very vigorous. It's just that she has the fate of Buddha. The old monk smiled. Benefactor, don't worry. When she is 4 years old, I will let her go down the mountain. You have to believe me. I won't restrict anyone's freedom. However, she must abstain from meat and vegetables. After that, she must leave the mountain. Within 5 years, she must not live with His Highness and her brothers. As for who will take care of her, Old Monk and Lord Phoenix will decide together. Helene Vivian raised her eyebrows. She has to recognize her relatives. Of course, but you can't live together. The old monk said as he took out a sarira. Take this sarira with you. After 10 days, you won't vomit so badly. Recently, there was a rumor in the company. That was, their CEO Jew was very likely to dump his current wife. Because in the past few days, some people saw that CEO Jew didn't return to the villa. It seemed that he ate and lived in the company. After hearing this news, some people were eager to take advantage of this opportunity to rise up. The first one to stand out was a female celebrity who had been very popular recently. She originally wanted to fall into Beligajew's arms. She had also learned a lot about this circle. She heard that Beligajew didn't return to the villa because that lady was pregnant. How could a hot-blooded man not touch a woman? The female celebrity thought that this was a good opportunity. Beligajew would definitely not be able to hold back. But before her hand could touch his collar, she heard him say something. She was frozen to the spot by a gust of cold air. That person, that incomparably handsome man's eyes actually glowed with a blood-red light. Before she could call for help, a black feather pierced through her hand and nailed her to the ground. Blood gushed out in an instant. Beligajew just looked at all of this indifferently. Who let her in? It should be the business department. Then, over there. Even Green Dragon was afraid when facing such a prince. Beligajew wiped his fingers. There was no warmth in his voice. Get rid of them, including the person who let her in. With that, he took the car keys and walked out of the company building. Green Dragon knew that His Highness had returned to the villa. That's right. In fact, Beligajew had never really stayed in the company for a night. Every time, he would return to the villa when Princess Consort was asleep and leave after Princess Consort woke up. Although Green Dragon didn't know why His Highness did this. He was sure that it was not because he was tired of relationships. Where's the lady? Master, the lady has fallen asleep. She ate the same amount as yesterday. Nothing more, nothing less. Everything is normal. Did she vomit? No. I see. You can go now. Beligajew casually put his coat aside. After making sure that there was no smell of blood on him, he walked to the sleeping person. Pinching her face with his fingers, Beligajew chuckled and tucked her scattered hair behind her ear. Then, he lay down with his clothes on and took her into his arms. Originally, he wanted to leave before she woke up like a few days ago. He didn't expect that she was not asleep. She looked at him with her pure black eyes. After looking at him for a while, she kissed him in a daze. I won't vomit. You don't have to leave so early in the future. Even demons need to sleep. Okay. Beligajew let her lie on his body. His fingers patted her back again and again. The scene of two people sleeping in each other's arms was always so beautiful that it made people envious. In fact, demons didn't need to sleep. Everything he did was to accompany her. But since she was no longer vomiting, he didn't have to go to the company anymore. The executives of Ju Wei Group finally breathed a sigh of relief. One had to know that the big boss had meetings with them every day when he stayed in the company. Others didn't know, but they knew very well. What relationship weariness. It was obvious that the boss was unhappy because he couldn't see the lady, so he spent the extra energy on the meetings. Every meeting made them break out in cold sweat. They were afraid that they would be fired. These foolish mortals actually believed in the concept of the ennui period. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.